Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. The main character, after dying, gets reborn as a Xenomorph inside of the movie Alien. Will Ripley be able to survive the main character now that he is the Xenomorph?
Alien, what if I was the Xenomorph? Chapter 1, A Good Night to Die, apparently. It started out as a perfect evening. Not perfect in the cinematic, romanticized way, no candlelight, no rain-soaked confessions or orchestral swells in the background, but in that quiet, unambitious, perfectly average way that feels like slipping into a familiar sweatshirt. The kind of night where nothing goes wrong, and nothing has to go right. Just stillness, comfort, and a little indulgence. I had gotten home earlier than usual, a rare victory in itself. The city was damp, the pavement reflecting neon signs and brake lights like something out of Blade Runner. I didn't care. I had one goal for the night: hot food and a rewatch of Alien, the original 1979 classic, Ridley Scott's masterpiece. Chinese takeout, check. Pajama pants, check. Blanket, check. TV queued up, lights dimmed, phone silenced. I was a king, and this was my domain. As the opening credits rolled, I cracked open the carton of General Tso's, steam wafting up in gentle plumes. I knew this meal was a salt bomb waiting to happen, but that was a problem for future me. Present me was hungry and content. I balanced the container on my stomach, leaned back, and let myself fall into that beautiful, suffocating atmosphere of the Nostromo. God, I loved this movie. I've lost count of how many times I've seen it, maybe 30? 35? And it still gets me every time. The pacing, the sound design, the minimalist horror. No jump scares, no cheap thrills, just tension that winds tighter and tighter until you forget how to breathe. I grinned as Dallas, Ripley, Lambert, and the others started their descent onto LV-426. There's this quiet dread that settles in early, like the film is whispering, "You know this ends badly, right?" And I did. Of course I did. But I was here for it. It felt good to disconnect. Work had been a mess. Not a dramatic mess, just the usual slow drip hell that eats away at your patience one email at a time. Project revisions, team meetings that could have been Slack messages, and one too many urgent client calls that somehow never actually mattered. But tonight? None of that could touch me. I slurped down a noodle, chased it with a gulp of soda, and sighed in satisfaction. The apartment around me was a little messy laundry pile in the corner, takeout menus scattered across the counter, but I didn't care. I was in my bubble. Just me, a cold classic, and a stomach full of soy sauce and nostalgia. "You poor bastards don't even know what's coming," I murmured, watching the crew poke around the derelict alien ship like horror movie amateurs. I wasn't one of those guys who yelled at the screen, but I liked talking during movies. At least when I was alone. It made the place feel less empty. About halfway through, right around the infamous chestburster scene, I paused the movie and reached for a second spring roll. My fingers were a little greasy, and I made a mental note to not smudge the remote again. Wiped them on a napkin, cracked my neck, shifted under the blanket. And that's when it hit me. Not pain, exactly. Not yet. More like a flicker of discomfort. A twitch, right beneath the sternum. Like a hiccup inside my ribcage that didn't finish. I sat still, waiting. Sometimes I get indigestion. Sometimes my anxiety likes to throw random curveballs. I figured it was nothing. Just a cramp. Maybe I was laying funny. But then it happened again. Stronger this time. A dull pressure, like someone was pushing the heel of their palm against my chest from the inside. "Hey," I said aloud. "That's weird." I sat up straighter, set my food aside, and placed a hand over my heart. My pulse was racing erratic. Not just fast, but stumbling. Like it didn't know what rhythm it was supposed to follow. Okay. Now I was paying attention. I took a breath. Shaky. Then another. Shakier. The apartment suddenly felt too quiet. The soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the buzz of the old lamp in the corner, it all felt distant, like I was underwater. The TV was still frozen on the paused scene, Kane clutching his chest, eyes wide with terror. "Oh come on," I muttered, trying to shake the creeping dread from my bones. "No way. Not like this." My body wasn't listening. I reached for my soda, thinking maybe I just needed something cold, something grounding. But my fingers barely gripped the can before it slipped and thudded onto the carpet, soda fizzing out across the floor. That's when panic settled in. My heart was going haywire now, thudding so loud I could hear it in my ears. My limbs felt heavy, tingling. I couldn't seem to catch a full breath. I tried to stand, thinking maybe I could walk it off. Stupid, I know, but my knees buckled halfway up and I dropped hard onto the floor. "No, no, no," I gasped, clutching at the edge of the coffee table, pulling myself halfway upright. My vision blurred for a moment, then sharpened in these weird, inconsistent flashes. The room tilted. I felt like I was sliding off the edge of reality, scraping against the edges of consciousness without fully blacking out. I pulled out my phone. My fingers were trembling so badly I could barely tap the screen. I pressed down on the emergency call icon, but my thumb missed. I tried again. Dropped it. The phone clattered across the hardwood, screen down, just out of reach. My entire chest was cramping now. Not stabbing pain, crushing. Like someone had laid a concrete slab on top of me. I gasped again, but it felt like breathing through a straw. I couldn't get enough air. My arms spasmed, my legs went numb. And in that moment, curled on the floor, panting like an overheated dog, surrounded by scattered takeout and the flickering light of a paused movie, I realized something terrifying. I might be dying. Not in the abstract, hypothetical way we joke about. But actually. Right now. And I was alone. My thoughts spun. No last words. No one here to witness it. I hadn't called my parents in over 2 weeks. Hadn't finished that email to Jordan at work. Hadn't paid rent yet. Hadn't taken out the trash. Hell, I still had leftovers in the fridge I was looking forward to. "This can't be it," I croaked. I think I cried then. Not a sobbing mess, but silent tears. The kind that come out when you're too far gone to protest, when your body has taken control and all you can do is watch it fail. I lay there, staring at the popcorn ceiling, waiting for the pain to subside. It didn't. It got worse. Then something inside gave. Like a snapped wire. A system shutting down. The pain stopped, but so did everything else. No heartbeat. No breath. No fear. Only cold. Only silence. Only. Chapter 2, Birth of a Monster. Air. I gasped, violently, as though breaking the surface of a freezing lake after being dragged to its depths. My lungs, if I even still had lungs, screamed with unfamiliarity, like they hadn't tasted oxygen in years, or ever. The sensation was suffocating, like drowning in reverse. My whole body seized up, then recoiled like it didn't know how to exist in this state. Darkness surrounded me. Wet, warm, organic darkness. The first thing I felt was the fluid, thick, viscous, like jelly mixed with oil. It clung to my body, coated every inch of me. Every movement came with resistance, like wading through syrup. I tried to speak, to cry out, but there was no voice. No vocal cords. Just instinct. Panic. Where am I? I opened something. Not eyes. Not yet. Sensory organs, maybe raw and unfiltered. Everything was fuzzy, distorted by the fluid. I pushed outward, instinct overriding conscious thought. My limbs scraped against a membrane, pulsing and elastic. I clawed, kicked, pressed until... crack! A tear in the membrane. Light dim and unnatural filtered in. It wasn't daylight. It wasn't a lamp. It was the blue-white glow of a ship's internal lighting, sterile and sharp. I pushed harder. The egg, because that's what it was, peeled open like a flower from hell. I tumbled out, my slick form hitting the metal floor with a squelch. And I lay there, twitching, breathing fast through slits in my body that pulsed with every exhale. I could feel my limbs multiple, spindly, jointed and something long, twitching behind me. I lifted one of my limbs. No fingers. No nails. Just a long, pale digit that ended in a sharp tip. My body was small, grotesque, disturbingly powerful. I moved another limb, then another, and realized I had 8. My breathing quickened. What the hell am I? I crawled forward, catching my reflection in the polished edge of a nearby panel. The sight almost made me collapse in a seizure of confusion and disgust. Pale, crab-like legs. A long, sinewy tail that curled and uncurled without permission. No eyes. No mouth. Just a strange, hideous form, alien and nightmarish. And in that moment, it hit me. All at once. I knew this shape. I'd seen it 100 times. Posters. Wiki pages. The movie I was just watching. I was a face hugger. Somehow impossibly, incomprehensibly I had become a face hugger. I froze. Not because of fear, but because I had no idea how to move forward. Every step I took, every breath, every instinct, it all felt borrowed. My mind was human, but my body was not. And the disconnect was dizzying. But I couldn't panic. I couldn't afford to. Somewhere deep in my new body's primitive instincts, something clicked: survival. Danger was near. I heard footsteps. Boots. Clanking against the deck. Steady, careful, uncertain. I felt vibrations more than sound, like a spider sensing prey through its web. I scurried toward the shadow of a nearby pipe. My body moved too fast, too smoothly. Muscles I didn't have before now obeyed with eerie precision. I curled beneath the pipe, legs clinging to its underside, tail coiled tightly, trembling with tension. And then I saw him. Kane. Tall, lean, dressed in the standard Nostromo gear. Cautious. Curious. Holding a flashlight and peering into the gloom. My breath, if it could be called that, hitched. This was the moment. The moment from the film. The one that kick-started the nightmare. And I was in it. I didn't want this. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but the body I now inhabited had other plans. Hunger. Purpose. Programming. I could feel it radiating through my limbs like electricity. My mind shouted no, but my muscles tensed. I clung tighter to the pipe, frozen. Kane stepped closer to the egg I'd burst from, his eyes narrowing. He muttered something under his breath, probably surprise or confusion, but I couldn't hear it clearly. I could feel him. Warmth. Breath. The thrum of life. My body reacted, even without command. He crouched. Leaned in. No, I thought. Don't. Please don't. But he did. Like every version of Kane in every cut of the movie Curiosity Killing the Cat. And that's when I leapt. A single, fluid motion. A blur of pale limbs and coiled tail. I soared through the air with impossible grace and landed squarely on his face. His scream was muffled instantly beneath my grip. My legs wrapped around his head, tail latching behind his neck like a seatbelt from hell. He staggered, arms flailing, but I held fast. My body knew what to do. It didn't ask. It just did. And as I latched onto him, burrowing into the process I didn't want to understand, I had one final, horrifying realization. There was no waking up from this. Chapter 3, The Guilt Beneath the Flesh. I could feel him thrashing beneath me. Each motion of Kane's body was frantic, desperate. His hands clawed at my limbs, trying to tear me away, but I clung tighter. My legs wrapped firmer around his head, my tail constricted harder behind his neck, anchoring me with a purpose that terrified me. I wasn't thinking anymore, my body was acting on pure instinct. The long, sinewy appendage on my underbelly snaked toward his throat, and as it made contact, I felt a rush. Not emotion, something deeper. Cellular. Like my entire being aligned with a single biological directive. This wasn't about choice. This was programming. And then silence. Kane's body stopped fighting. He slumped to the floor with a dull thud. His limbs twitched a little, but they were limp, useless now. My grip remained iron strong. I could feel the tube inside him, doing what it was made to do, implanting something. Seating him. I tried not to think about it. I tried not to understand it. But I did. Because somewhere inside this grotesque shell of a body, I was still me. My thoughts, my memories, my guilt all intact, all watching this nightmare unfold from behind the glass of a body that didn't belong to me. Kane groaned faintly, like a man talking in his sleep. His breath was shallow, steady. He wasn't dead. Not yet. That somehow made it worse. I stayed there, attached to him like some hellish parasite, unmoving but aware. The room was quiet, save for the dim hum of the ship and the occasional hiss of a vent cycling air. It was cold. Not physically, I couldn't feel cold anymore, but emotionally. Hollow. I should have been riding the high of power, or maybe terrified beyond belief. But instead, I felt heavy. What the hell am I doing? This wasn't how I imagined a second chance. When I died back on Earth, choking on noodles and surprise and silence, I thought maybe there'd be peace. Or at least nothing. Not this. Not me becoming the very thing I feared and loved on screen. I didn't want to kill anyone. Kane hadn't done anything wrong. He was just curious. Like I used to be. And now I was in the process of killing him, not quickly, but slowly. From the inside out. And the worst part? There was no stopping it. This body, this alien shell, wouldn't let me stop. It had a mission. It had a timer. And now that timer was ticking away inside of Kane's chest. I tried to pull away, to loosen my grip. Maybe I could jump off, maybe I could leave him be. But I couldn't. Not because I didn't want to, but because my body refused. The tail tightened even more, locking me in place. Every time I tried to will myself to stop, the muscles ignored me. The biological imperative was stronger than my conscience. So I stayed there. Like a passenger in my own body, forced to watch. And slowly, in that sterile, cold room, the adrenaline faded. What was left behind was a dull, creeping sadness. Not the kind that strikes like lightning, but the kind that seeps into your bones. The kind you can't shake. He's going to die because of me. And I couldn't even cry. I didn't have the glands. Or the eyes. Or the face. So I just laid there, pressed to his unconscious form, listening to his heartbeat with my own alien senses, knowing that it was ticking down to silence. He made a soft noise. A gasp. His fingers twitched. Somewhere in his brain, he might have still been dreaming. I wondered if he saw his family. I wondered if he even realized death was coming. I didn't know how long I stayed like that. Minutes? Hours? Time was slippery now. But eventually, my body shifted. A signal fired somewhere in this monstrous thing that I had become, and slowly, instinctively, I detached. The tail uncoiled. The legs released. I slithered off Kane's face with sickening grace, leaving him there unconscious, breathing, with a killer growing inside him. I crawled away, dragging myself back toward the shadows of the egg chamber. My body felt lighter, like I'd finished some grueling, necessary task. But my mind felt worse. I wanted to scream. To vomit. To rewind everything. Instead, I curled up beneath a cluster of pipes, feeling the last tremors of adrenaline fade into stillness. And in that stillness, I thought, is this what the rest of my life is going to be? A series of deaths I can't stop? No answers came. Only silence. And the hum of the ship. And the soft sound of Kane breathing, for now. Chapter 4, The Stranger in Our Arms. The silence of the airlock broke with a low hiss as the outer doors cracked open. "Get a move on," Dallas muttered, voice taut over the intercom. "Lambert, take left. Parker, cover the right. I want eyes on everything." The dull echo of boots hitting metal filled the chamber as they descended the ramp, nostrils stung by the stale air of the derelict. Even with suits on, there was no masking the atmosphere inside. It was wrong. Old. Dead. And then, movement. "There!" Lambert shouted, pointing her light into the murky dark. "Something's down, oh my god! It's Kane." Dallas moved first. "Hold position, don't touch him." Kane lay sprawled on the floor near the edge of the ruined egg chamber, his arms limp at his sides. Something was on him. It was a sick parody of life, the thing clinging to his face like a spider out of hell. Its limbs curled around his skull, a long tail wrapped around his throat in an obscene embrace. "Jesus," Parker muttered, keeping a few paces back. "The hell is that thing?" I don't know," Lambert breathed, her eyes wide inside the helmet. "But it's alive." They were all still for a moment, caught between revulsion and the raw, pulsing instinct of survival. The face-hugger didn't move. Didn't twitch. But it was too symmetrical, too still. It had to be alive. Dallas exhaled. "Ash, you seeing this?" "Copy," came the voice from the Nostromo. "Calm. Clinical. Can you confirm Kane's vital signs?" Dallas knelt slowly. "I'll check." His gloved fingers reached for Kane's neck, pressing carefully beneath the collar of his suit. There was a beat. Then another. Then... "He's alive." The three of them stared at each other. It didn't make sense. That thing was on him. It should have killed him. And yet... Dallas looked back toward the ship. "Ash, prep the med bay. We're bringing him in." "Understood," Ash said smoothly. Too smoothly. "Hold up," Parker interrupted, hand out. "Should we even be doing that? What if it's contagious?" "You wanna leave him here?" Lambert snapped. "I'm saying we might be bringing a biological weapon on board. We don't know what that thing is." Dallas didn't waver. "We bring our people home. We quarantine. But we don't leave anyone behind." He reached under Kane's arms and began to lift, careful not to disturb the thing on his face. Lambert helped steady the legs, her jaw tight. "I've got his legs. Watch his head, Dallas." "I am watching his head." Parker held back for a second longer, then sighed and moved forward, helping clear the path. They walked slowly, as though every step might disturb the delicate balance between life and death. None of them spoke again until they were back inside the ship. "Med Bay Nostromo." Ash stood waiting, the doors to the med lab already open, white lights bathing the corridor in sterile intensity. Put him here, Ash instructed, gesturing to the central pod. Careful with the tail, it may be reacting to stimuli. Still not moving, Lambert murmured as she helped settle Kane into place. Is it breathing? Yes, Ash confirmed. Though not through any mechanism we're familiar with. He leaned closer, eyes gleaming slightly as he peered at the thing's ridged hide. Fascinating construction, organic armor. Possibly silicon-based. Cut the science crap, Parker said, arms folded. Can we get it off him? Ash looked up, blinking as if reminded the rest of them were still there. Not yet. Attempting to remove it forcibly may kill the host. The host. Lambert repeated, voice rising. That's Kane. Not a petri dish. I understand your concern, Ash replied evenly, but we're dealing with an unknown organism that clearly made contact with a living subject. The safest course is to wait. Monitor his vitals. Learn from it. Dallas's eyes narrowed. How long until we know if he's stable? I've already started the scans, Ash said, gesturing toward the monitors. So far, his blood pressure is holding. Brain activity is low, but not flatlined. He's unconscious. Likely in a comatose state. Lambert turned away, arms hugging her sides. I don't like this. This whole place, this ship, that thing, we shouldn't have gone in. Parker looked over his shoulder. Coulda told you that. But we're in it now. Dallas didn't respond. He just stared down at Kane, chest rising and falling beneath the breathing mask, and that thing. The tail was still wrapped firm, like it wasn't done with him yet. He had a bad feeling about this. Not a hunch. Not a superstition. Just something cold sitting at the base of his spine. Let me know the second anything changes, Dallas said quietly. Ash nodded. Of course. Dallas walked out without another word. Lambert followed, silent. Parker lingered for a moment, staring at Kane like he was already gone. Ash remained. Alone. He leaned in once the others had left and tilted his head at the face-hugger like a man admiring a painting. Beautiful, he murmured. Then turned back to his console and began typing. Chapter 5, Warmth, Sorrow, and the Weight of Purpose. It's warm here. Not the kind of warmth that melts your skin or scorches your lungs, but a deep, pulsing warmth, alive, thick, and wet. The rhythm of Kane's heartbeat thrums beneath me, dull and thunderous, echoing through my small, clinging body. His chest rises and falls. He breathes for both of us now. I am quiet. I do not move. But I am not asleep. I feel him, the rise and fall of his thoughts flickering like dying embers. He dreams in memories. Not images I understand, not fully, but emotion bleeds out in thick ribbons. Flashes of fear. Confusion. And something sharp, panic buried under denial. His mind writhes, trying to make sense of me. I whisper back without words, it will be over soon. Not because I want it to be, but because it must be. And still, I feel it. That tiny twist in me. Regret? Maybe. Maybe it's just his own guilt bleeding into me. I don't know where he ends and I begin anymore. Our connection is brief, but it's real. My purpose is simple. But simple does not mean easy. Voices outside. Muffled. Can we get it off him? The words stab like cold iron. Offended. My tail tightens just a little, not in rage, not in threat, just irritation. It, they said. Me. A parasite. The word ripples through the air like acid. I don't fully grasp their language, but I know tone. Emotion. I've seen their memories, tasted their fears. And I know what a parasite is to them. A thief. A monster. A blight. I am not a parasite. I do not steal. I do not feed like vermin. I create. I carry life perfect, pure, precise. I am the architect of something greater than they can comprehend. I am the bridge between womb and world. I do not infect. I build. Yet they call me parasite. Like I'm some leech sucking on the side of their fragile reality. Cain doesn't even know he's dying. Not truly. His body is unaware of what grows inside. But I feel it. The spark. The coil of cells folding, growing, latching. My work is almost done. And when I am finished, I will die. That, too, is part of the cycle. But I am not ready to let go. Not yet. For all their noise, their judgment, they don't see me. They do not recognize what I've given them. A miracle. There's a shift in the air. The humans are gone. The room is quiet again, save for the hum of machines and the beeping that follows Cain's pulse like a metronome. I remain still. Still as stone. Their machines scan me. I can feel their little fingers of data trying to peer into me, decode me, measure me. Fools. I am more than their knowledge. More than their science. Their world is numbers and logic, mine is instinct and legacy. And still. I feel that little twist inside again. That damn tug of something like sorrow. Cain didn't deserve this. He was just there. In the chamber. Wrong place, wrong time. And I chose him. Quick. Efficient. Purposeful. But not fair. It wasn't fair. Yet fairness has no place in evolution. Nature doesn't barter. She takes. She transforms. I am merely her hand. Still. I hear his name in their voices, soft, trembling, human. Cain. They care for him. They'll mourn him. And somehow, that makes it worse. I release a breath that isn't breath. My body quivers. My limbs are beginning to slacken. My time is almost up. The embryo is ready. Nestled deep inside, cocooned in the folds of his flesh. Growing strong, beautiful, and deadly. I can feel its hunger, its heartbeat forming from mine. One more breath. I loosen my grip. One more heartbeat. I begin to peel away. Inside the med bay. The humans will see it as retreat. Or escape. They'll think I've died, maybe. Or fled out of cowardice. They won't know I've fulfilled my purpose. They won't understand that I stayed longer than I had to. That I lingered not out of fear, but out of guilt, pity, connection. It doesn't matter now. I let go. My legs unfurl from Cain's skull, trembling. My tail unwinds. I stumble away like a drunk, limbs weak, body drained. Every fiber of my being aches as I crawl into a corner of the med bay into shadow. It is done. I curl inward and wait for death, quiet and proud, but a little sad. They will find me soon. They will prod and poke and label. But they will never understand. And Cain, poor Cain. I'm sorry. Chapter 6, The Calm Before. It was Ripley who noticed first. Her hand froze halfway to the coffee mug as her eyes caught the flickering light on the medbay monitor. One of the biometric readings had shifted. Just enough to pull her gaze to the screen, and just enough for her gut to churn. She put the mug down, slowly, and took 2 steps toward the console. Cain's heart rate just spiked, she said quietly. Ash was already moving before the words were fully out of her mouth, gliding toward the terminal like the floor carried him there. Dallas followed behind him, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, his face drawn and unshaven. "Everyone else, stay here," Dallas ordered over his shoulder, though it was barely a suggestion. Parker and Lambert were already standing up, but paused reluctantly at the threshold. The corridor felt colder than before. The medbay door hissed open. Jesus! The room was quiet. Too quiet. The sort of silence that feels intentional. Like the air is holding its breath. Kane was still. Pale. His mouth slightly open. Chest rising, falling. Alive but barely. But it wasn't him that made Ripley's stomach turn. It was the thing. Or rather, the absence of it. The face hugger was gone. All that remained was a smear of yellowish fluid across Kane's cheek and jaw, a torn medical strap, and the unmistakable stink of something organic having been there far too long. Ash stepped forward, eyes wide, professional, but too calm. Too fascinated. "Where the hell is it?" Dallas murmured, drawing closer to the table, hand drifting toward his sidearm. He wasn't sure what he expected it to do, but the weight of it gave him something to cling to. "It's not in here," Ripley whispered. Ash crouched beside the table, examining the loose restraints. It removed itself. Voluntarily. "What?" Dallas barked, confused. That thing had Kane locked up like a goddamn spider on a fly. It didn't just fall off. Ash reached up, pulling up the footage on the terminal. They all leaned in. The grainy recording showed the thing twitching weak, sluggish, peeling its limbs from Kane's face like a dying crab. It stumbled off the table, its legs dragging. Then it vanished off camera, retreating into the shadowed corner of the room beneath the supply counter. That was 3 hours ago. Nobody had checked the footage since. They moved slow, guns drawn, lights sweeping every crevice. Ripley was the one to find it. Over here by the wall. It was curled in on itself. Limbs withered, the long tail coiled like a sleeping cat. Dead. Or something close to it. Parker looked like he was about to be sick. "Ugh, it's disgusting." Ash was already sliding on gloves, crouching beside the creature like a kid seeing his first butterfly. "Don't touch it," Ripley said sharply. "I have to examine it." "No, you don't," Dallas cut in. "Not yet. We need to know if Kane's safe." Ash didn't argue. He stood slowly and backed away, though his eyes stayed fixed on the creature's corpse as if it might whisper secrets if he stared long enough. 10 minutes later, Kane stirred. Ripley's heart stopped for a beat. He groaned. His hand twitched. She was at his side in an instant, grabbing his wrist. "Kane? Can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered. His breath hitched. Then he turned his head slightly, squinting against the overhead light. What happened?" Dallas exhaled hard, running a hand down his face. "You tell us." Kane blinked slowly, voice hoarse. "Last thing I remember, the egg. It opened and something. I think it jumped at me." "You've been out for almost a full day," Ripley said gently. Kane swallowed hard, throat dry. "Feels like my chest's on fire." Dallas exchanged a look with Ash, who stepped forward cautiously. "We'll run scans," Ash said calmly, "but you're alive. That's what matters." Ripley wasn't so sure. She looked at Kane. Then at the limp, shriveled husk of the thing in the corner. And a shiver passed down her spine. The mess hall was quieter than usual that evening. Kane sat up, sipping weak soup, surrounded by the rest of the crew who tried their best not to stare at him. He laughed once, weakly, joking that he felt like someone kicked him in the chest. No one laughed back. Ripley sat across from him, arms crossed. Ash loomed nearby, observing. Dallas rubbed his temples, head pounding. Think he's in the clear? Lambert asked quietly. I don't like it, Ripley muttered. What part? Dallas asked. All of it. That thing came off on its own. Left him alive. Now it's dead. It's too convenient. He's awake, breathing, eating. And whatever was in that thing. We never found it. Dallas fell silent. Ash spoke up. Perhaps it implanted nothing. Maybe its goal was only oxygenation. Sustenance. It's alien, its biology may operate in a way we don't understand. Ripley narrowed her eyes. You don't know that. Ash smiled gently. Which is why we observe. But even he couldn't hide the glint of anticipation behind his composed exterior. That night, in the silence of the corridor, the ship hummed. Kane lay still, breathing deep, chest rising and falling. And deep within him, something stirred. Chapter 7, Breaking Point. The mess hall lights were dimmed, but the laughter real, actual laughter was louder than anyone expected. Kane had insisted on sitting up, waving off concerns with that crooked, awkward grin that made him seem a decade younger than his years. He was pale, sure, and there was a tiredness to his movements, but the man was alive. Talking. Eating. I swear, he said, chuckling as he took another bite of food, if this slop's the price for survival, I might just jump out the airlock voluntarily next time. Even Parker laughed, a quick, bark-like noise that echoed down the steel corridors. Ripley didn't. She watched Kane closely, too closely, and chewed without tasting a thing. Ash sat across from her, delicately slicing a cube of protein into impossibly even sections. He had barely spoken all meal. I don't know what's more surprising, Dallas muttered, spoon clinking against his tray, that you're eating, or that you're making jokes while you do it. Kane grinned. Survival instinct. Or trauma. Hard to tell. Lambert smiled too, but it didn't reach her eyes. No one spoke of the face hugger. No one asked what really happened inside that egg. The unspoken thing hung above the table, heavy and quiet. Still, this was the first time since LV-426 that the crew felt human again. Just a little. Kane reached for another bite. His hand trembled slightly, but he managed to grip the fork. Ugh, he said suddenly, making a face. Must have gone down wrong. Ripley looked up instantly. What's wrong? Kane cleared his throat, pounding a fist against his chest lightly. Just something stuck. Damn soup. Feels tight. Then his face twitched. Eyes wide. Breath catching. He made a horrible, wet sound and hunched over. Kane. Lambert's voice was almost a whisper. Kane. He coughed once, then again, violently, and suddenly slammed both hands on the table, knocking over his tray. The bowl clattered to the floor. He wheezed, gasping. His lips were turning blue. Jesus Christ, Ash, do something! Ripley shouted. Ash was already moving, hands out, eyes wide but clinical. Lie back. Kane, try to breathe. Aye. Kane's back arched. He let out a high, strangled scream, not even human. His hands clawed at his chest like he was trying to dig something out. Help him! Lambert shrieked. Kane convulsed again. Blood. It spilled from his mouth, thin and red, trailing down his chin. Then came the sound, a wet, organic tear from beneath his ribcage. A spray of crimson hit the table. And something forced its way out. A shriek. From Kane. From Lambert. From everyone, in some way. A small, pale, living thing burst from Kane's chest with a slick, muscular motion, streaked in blood and fluids. It landed on the table, twitching. The room froze. The thing lifted its tiny head, slick and eyeless. It let out a hiss high-pitched, unnatural, like metal scraping glass, and coiled back on itself. Oh my god, Parker backed away, knocking over his chair. Dallas stared, paralyzed. Kane twitched once, then lay still. Very still. The thing squealed. Then it moved fast. It scurried off the table like a silver fish, vanishing down the corridor. The silence after was not silence. It was shock, saturated and thick. Time broke apart. They were shouting, each of them, one after the other. Where the hell did it go? Get it out of the medbay. Shut the doors. Parker ran to the hall, then hesitated, breathing hard, arms shaking. I didn't even see it. It's fast like a rat, but on speed. Lambert was sobbing against the wall. Ash stood over Kane's body, motionless, eyes locked on the crimson mess of what used to be a man. Ripley was the first to regain control. Quarantine protocol, she said hoarsely. We need to lock this section down now. Dallas blinked. Right. Right. Seal the lower deck. Parker, motion sensors. Ash, what the hell was that thing? Ash turned to face them, slow and oddly composed. I can't be sure, he said. But it appears to be a larval stage. An organism birthed from a host, likely a result of the initial facehugger's implantation. You said it didn't implant anything. Ripley snarled. Ash's mouth tightened slightly. I said we had no evidence. Now we do. Parker stormed back, fists clenched. We need to kill that thing. You saw what it did. It just tore through him like tissue paper. Lambert covered her ears, shaking. Shut up, just shut up, all of you. Lambert, breathe, Ripley said, taking her gently by the shoulders. We're still alive. We need to stay that way. Okay. Lambert nodded shakily. Ash finally stepped away from Kane's body. I suggest we prioritize containment, he said. The organism is small, but likely agile. Unpredictable. We must assume it's dangerous. No, Ripley snapped. We know it's dangerous. It killed Kane. That's all the evidence I need. Hours later, the medbay was sealed. Kane's body, what was left of it, was wrapped and prepared for stasis, though none of them had said who would do it. Ash volunteered. Parker prowled the corridors, motion tracker in hand, muttering curses under his breath. Lambert locked herself in her cabin. Dallas stood in the command deck, staring at the monitors like they'd give him answers he already feared. Ripley sat in the storage room alone. She thought of Kane's smile. His laughter. The moment he'd reached for soup with shaking hands and said he felt fine. She clenched her fists. That thing had been inside him the entire time. And they didn't see it. Chapter 8, The Next Step. The sensation of the birth, the violent tearing has dulled, replaced with a kind of clarity. I am here. I am alive. The pain of becoming, of breaking through the fragile shell of that human, feels like a distant memory now, like something I only heard about from the mouths of others. It doesn't matter. I am perfect. At least, I will be. But I should not linger. The human body, its discarded remains, draws me for a moment, a twisted knot of instinct and fleeting thought. Kane's body lies there, crushed and torn, like a broken toy tossed aside. His chest is a gaping wound, the ribs splayed open, blood congealing around him. His face a mask of agony, frozen in time. I could almost feel his fear before I made my exit. I should feel something. The human in me shreds of memory knows I should. But I don't. It's not because I'm indifferent. Not exactly. It's just. I am no longer human. And that thought is freeing, liberating. There is no longer any need to cling to their fragile morality, their soft emotions, their weak sensibilities. I can see them now, their bodies, their hearts, their minds, all of them so frail. They cannot endure as I can. This body, this form, this is only the beginning. The first step. I was once something else, something human. I know this because the memories of my previous life cling to me like an old coat I can't take off. Their whispers are quiet now, faint like the rustling of leaves in the wind. But when I focus, I hear them still. I was Shredder. But that man, he is dead. He died. Just as Cain did. Just as all of them will. But I will endure. And more. The thoughts stir inside me, half-formed, but relentless. One day, I will rise above them all. One day, I will become a queen, a perfect being, and I will shape the universe in my image. No more weakness. No more fear. Only perfection. I will transcend. Become more. A shiver of what could be called pleasure courses through me as the thoughts solidify. Yes, I am more. I am already growing, changing. My body is adapting. The pulse of the ship, the hum of the Nostromo around me, it fills me, syncing with my every movement, my every thought. This is not my home, but it will become so. I will take it. I will claim it. In this form, I do not need pity. I do not need compassion. I am beyond it. And yet, the question remains. Why do I feel this? Why do I still remember the humanity that I once was, the fleeting whispers of emotions and impulses that I no longer share? Is it because of my body's old wiring? Or is it simply because I am not yet complete? For a brief moment, I find myself staring at the remnants of Cain's corpse, his skin pale, his flesh hanging in tatters, the blood slowly drying against the cold metal floor of the ship. I do not regret. Not truly. I will never regret. But I do not feel nothing. I cannot. Not yet. I feel something almost like a dull ache in my chest. I do not need his death to fuel my purpose. I do not need pity for my existence. But there is a faint sense of loss. I am changing. In this alien form, I am becoming something more. But the human side of me, so distant, so lost, can't help but wonder. Was I ever truly human to begin with? I push the thought away, deeper into the recesses of my mind. Why does it matter? I am an alien now. I am an apex predator. And I will become perfect. I will ascend. I will surpass them all. The sound of movement echoes from the corridor. The humans are coming. They are searching for me. They will try to stop me. But it won't matter. Nothing will stop me now. I move, swift as shadow, crawling through the vents of the ship, the pulse of my instincts guiding me. I am an apex being. My time has come. Chapter 9, The Search. The silence of the Nostromo was stifling. It hung thick in the air, settling into the corners of the hallways, where the usual hum of the ship's machinery felt muted, as if even the ship itself had grown wary of the events unfolding. Ripley stood at the command deck, eyes locked on the monitor, her thoughts distant and fragmented. She had no real plan, only instinct to keep them alive. The crew was splintered, each one dealing with the trauma in their own way, but none more obviously affected than Lambert. Ripley could still hear her crying in the storage room, her sobs muffled by the cold steel walls. "We need to find it," Dallas said, his voice tight, full of the same quiet dread Ripley was feeling. His hands gripped the edge of the console as he leaned forward, eyes glued to the blinking lights, to the scanning system. But the system was malfunctioning. The readings were sporadic, unclear. Nothing was pinpointed. Everything was uncertain. "You don't think it's gone, do you? Parker's voice came from behind her, raw and unsure. I mean, that thing was fast. We never saw where it went. We can't assume that, Ripley replied, her voice a little more strained than she intended. Until we confirm it, we keep searching. Everywhere. The rest of the crew had gathered near the med bay. Ash was still hovering over Kane's body, his hands pressed together in a posture that seemed almost prayer-like, though Ripley knew better. The man was cold, detached his usual demeanor. But she knew there was something different about him now. His eyes held an odd focus, almost curious. She glanced at him, but he didn't return her gaze. Instead, he was bent low, inspecting the corpse with quiet intensity. Kane's body was grotesque, torn open in ways no human body should ever be. It was a mess and atrocity. But Ash didn't seem to flinch. It's gone, Dallas muttered, exasperated, breaking the silence. How the hell do we fight something like that? We don't even know what it is. Don't start this, Ripley snapped. We don't know where it is. We don't know what it's doing. We don't even know what it wants. Parker rubbed his face, pacing. And what if it comes back? What if it hatches something worse? His voice wavered, a mixture of fear and frustration boiling over. I can't just sit here waiting for that thing to. It's still alive, Ash interjected, finally looking up from Kane's mangled body. His voice was calm, too calm, the faintest trace of an analytical tone beneath it all. Whatever that creature was, it is alive. It's adapting. It's evolving. Ripley turned to face him. What are you getting at, Ash? He stared at her. His eyes were cold, detached. It's a parasite. You saw it. It's a larva. What you didn't see was that it has a life cycle, a pattern. This is only the beginning. It's going to grow. And when it does, it will be far more dangerous. Ripley's gut churned, and she forced herself to push away the rising sense of dread. And you think that's our problem? You think we're the problem? Ash didn't reply immediately. He stepped closer to Kane's body, kneeling next to it once more. No. The problem isn't that it's a parasite. The problem is that we don't know what it is, how it works, or how it's going to evolve. That's what makes it dangerous. Then we need to kill it before it evolves, Dallas insisted. He turned to the others. Parker, you're with me. We'll check the cargo bays. Ripley, go with Lambert. Ash, you stay here and run diagnostics on the ship's systems. Ripley nodded, feeling a weight in her chest. Got it. Lambert didn't respond when Ripley found her near the storage area, huddled in the corner, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. The woman's face was pale, her eyes red and raw from crying. When Ripley approached, Lambert flinched and looked away, her expression breaking into a mix of fear and disbelief. I'm sorry, Lambert, Ripley said softly, sitting beside her. I know it's hard, but we can't stay in here. I know, Lambert whispered, wiping her eyes. She trembled. I don't know how we're supposed to fight something like that. It's not even human. How do you fight something you don't even understand? Ripley didn't answer at first. Instead, she just sat quietly, feeling the pressure of the ship around them. They were isolated, trapped in the cold metal belly of the Nostromo, with something alien, something unknowable hunting them. And every passing minute was another tick closer to whatever fate awaited them. I don't know, Ripley finally said, her voice firm, though uncertain. But we have to try. Meanwhile, deep within the ducts of the ship, the alien moved. It was a smooth motion, a silent slither, as it navigated the tight, metal maze of the Nostromo. The walls were cold against its body, but that didn't matter. It was perfect. It was adapting, becoming something more. Its movements were rapid, calculated, guided by an instinct it didn't fully understand yet, but it didn't need to. Every twist and turn of its growing form was simply part of the design. It could feel the life coursing through it. The way it changed as it absorbed the world around it. Each passing second, it grew stronger, more powerful. Soon, it would be unstoppable. And as it neared the heart of the ship, where the crew were searching, a flicker of the human memories within it stirred a fleeting, painful thought. Cain. It wasn't pity. Not really. But there was a momentary pang, a brief flicker of something it couldn't fully grasp. And then it was gone. The alien would become what it was destined to be. Nothing more. Nothing less. Chapter 10, The Weight of Silence. The dim lighting of the Nostromo barely illuminated the tension in the air. The crew moved in pairs now, and even that didn't feel like enough. Every echoing footstep, every distant thump or hiss of the ship's ventilation sent a chill crawling along their spines. It was the kind of silence that didn't just occupy space, it consumed it. Ripley clutched her pulse rifle tighter as she moved through the corridor, Lambert walking stiffly at her side. The younger woman's hands trembled, but she kept going, refusing to be left alone again. "I hate this," Lambert whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's like we're walking through a tomb." Ripley didn't reply immediately. She kept her eyes moving, sweeping each corner, every shadow. "We don't have a choice." "Do you think it's watching us?" Lambert's voice cracked on the last word. "I mean, right now." Ripley paused for a moment. Her gut twisted at the thought. "Probably." Lambert let out a shaky breath, brushing a strand of hair from her damp forehead. "Wonderful." They passed through a narrow hallway where crates had been stacked for months, most of them collecting dust. Ripley stopped abruptly and raised a hand. Lambert froze. A faint noise like a dragging sound echoed just ahead. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even distinct. But it was wrong. Not mechanical. Not natural. Alive. Ripley crouched low, heart thudding. The direction was unclear, and the sound had stopped almost as soon as it started. It was the not knowing that was the worst part, something she was quickly becoming accustomed to. Every hallway, every ceiling duct, every flickering light had become suspect. "Come on," Ripley murmured, motioning for Lambert to follow her into the adjacent room. On the other side of the ship, Dallas and Parker were moving through the cargo hold. The room was vast, filled with shadows and machinery that clanked and groaned under the ship's own weight. "You sure it came this way?" Parker asked, his tone edged with skepticism and fear. "Nope," Dallas replied curtly, scanning the dark corners with his flashlight. "But it's big. And it's fast. It has to be hiding somewhere it can move without us seeing." Parker grumbled under his breath and tightened his grip on the flamethrower. "I still say we torch the whole bay." "And if it's not here?" Dallas asked, glancing over. "We've just wasted fuel and lost containment." "What containment?" "That thing tore out of Cain like a damn torpedo. You saw it." "We don't contain that. We kill it." Dallas didn't argue. Not because he disagreed, but because he didn't know how to respond. There was no protocol for this. No training. No solution. Just survival. They crept deeper into the hold, their footsteps muffled by thick grating and scattered debris. Both men froze at the sight of movement in the shadows, a flicker, quick and unnatural. Dallas raised his weapon. Parker stepped forward, teeth gritted. But it was only a loose cable, swaying slightly from a broken pipe. The relief was fleeting. "This is insane," Parker said, exhaling heavily. "I signed up to haul cargo, not play hide and seek with some alien freak." Dallas looked around the massive, dark room and quietly agreed. In the med bay, Ash was alone. Kane's body had been covered now, a thin white sheet drawn over his pale, lifeless form. The body had begun to cool. There was no dignity in the stillness, just evidence. Ash stood beside the body, a data pad in one hand, and a cold, studious look in his eyes. He wasn't running diagnostics on the ship. He was reviewing the footage, every second of it. From the moment the creature detached from Kane's face, to the moment it burst from his chest. The event had been short, violent, and now, endlessly fascinating. Ash rewound the footage again. And again. "What are you?" he murmured to himself. "You're not a parasite. Not truly. No, you're something more." There was a reverence in his voice. Something bordering on awe. He reached for his private console and opened a separate file, one with a corporate insignia subtly embedded in the corner. As his fingers hovered over the keys, he hesitated only a second before typing. Specimen viable. Host terminated. Stage 2 organism loose on vessel. Advise next steps. He pressed send. The message vanished into encrypted transmission. Ash looked back at Kane's covered body, then toward the hallway that led to the rest of the ship. "Perfect organism," he whispered. Ripley and Lambert regrouped with Dallas and Parker near the center of the ship, frustration and exhaustion in every step. "Nothing," Dallas muttered. "It's like it vanished." "That's what it wants us to think," Ripley said, scanning the dark around them. "It's hiding. Waiting." Lambert clutched her arms tightly. "We can't keep doing this forever. What if it's smarter than we think? What if it's planning something?" No one answered. The silence returned. Thick. Cold. The hunt wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. And something was out there. Growing. Changing. Chapter 11, Hunger and Memory. The dark was not frightening. It was comforting, an old friend. The crawl spaces of the Nostromo were narrow, warm, and laced with the scent of metal, sweat, and oil. But there was something else now, something deeper, thrumming through me like a heartbeat that was not mine. Power. It was intoxicating. I had shed my infant form like a snake sheds its skin, left the warm ruin of flesh behind, and slithered into silence. Growth came fast. Exoskeleton hardened. Limbs lengthened. Claws sharpened. Teeth extended. It felt right. I was becoming something pure. And yet, I remembered. Not clearly. Not names or places or faces. Just impressions. Fragments. I remembered sitting cross-legged on a couch, fingers greasy with sauce, eyes wide with fascination. Alien, the movie. The original. I had watched it before. Once. Twice. Many times. I had admired the creature then. Now I was the creature. Funny, isn't it? I used to think they were monsters. Now I know better. Monsters don't evolve. Monsters don't adapt. We transcend. I moved silently through the vents, each muscle gliding in perfect synchrony, guided by instinct sharper than any human thought. The ship was alive with sound, boots thudding on grated floors, voices muffled behind bulkheads, the hum of life support cycling in deep mechanical sighs. But then I heard something else. Soft. Light. Furry. The cat. I found it near the galley. Small. Orange. Striped. Green eyes wide with terror. It saw me, and froze. I could hear its pulse rapid, stuttering, terrified. I tilted my head, watching it. There was no fear in me. Only hunger. It tried to run, but it never had a chance. A blur of motion, a quiet, wet crunch, and it was done. Warmth spread through me as I fed. It was not sustenance I needed for survival. It was indulgence. A reminder that I was no longer bound by weakness. I dragged the remains into a narrow shaft and pressed deeper into the ship. Quiet. Watching. Listening. And thinking. There had been stories. In my past life, my human life, I had read about the Queen. Mother Xenomorph. Towering, beautiful, devastating. The perfect mind within the perfect form. I hadn't feared her. I'd been awestruck. Fascinated. And now? Now I felt a pull. A longing I couldn't explain. Was that my path? Was I meant to become her? To birth a new line? A hive? The thought was exhilarating. And terrifying. I could feel something changing in me already. Not just physically, though my body was stretching and growing stronger by the hour, but mentally. Emotionally. The more time passed, the less I felt. No guilt. No hesitation. Even Cain, his death hadn't shaken me as much as I'd expected. I remembered his twitching limbs. His eyes. The final gurgle in his throat as I emerged. Once, that might have broken me. Now? Now it was just the beginning. Still, some sliver of regret flickered behind my eyes. Not for Cain. Not even for the cat. But for me. The man I had been. Whoever he was. Shredder. Was that it? A dumb name for a dumb man. What did that matter now? I was no longer him. And yet. Why does it matter? I hissed silently in the dark. I'm not human anymore. I'm better. A noise jolted me from my thoughts' footsteps. Close. I slipped farther into the darkness, my elongated body clinging to the ceiling of the ventilation shaft, holding perfectly still. Below me, two figures walked the corridor, unaware of the monster directly above their heads. Dallas. Ash. The captain's voice was hushed, but steady. I want to double patrols. That thing's somewhere in here. Ash walked with his hands behind his back, calm as ever. It's intelligent. You've seen the footage. It learns quickly. They passed beneath me, their lights scanning the hallway ahead. My inner jaw twitched. Ash's scent was strange. Not quite human. Not like the others. I remained silent. Unseen. But not for long. Chapter 12, Jonesy. The Nostromo had never felt so quiet. Ripley moved through the narrow halls of the ship, flashlight sweeping over empty corridors, her jaw clenched tighter with each echoing footstep. She could hear the others behind her, Lambert muttering to herself, Parker grumbling under his breath. Even Brett had stopped with the sarcastic commentary. No one was in the mood. Jonesy was gone. I swear he came this way, Ripley said, her voice sharper than she intended. She crouched down near the junction of two maintenance corridors, inspecting the floor as if it might hold some kind of clue: scratches, a tuft of orange fur, anything. I heard him meowing. Parker exhaled loudly. You sure he didn't just squeeze into a vent again? Cat's always sneaking off. Probably found a warm duct and took a nap. Ripley didn't answer. She stood, shining her light into the dark crawlspace ahead. Her hand trembled slightly. Not from fear. Not yet. From hope. She had to find him. Jonesy had been more than a pet. More than a mascot. He was stability, a living, breathing constant in the chaos of deep space. When the sleep cycles dragged on, when tension flared between the crew, when the cold of the ship felt like it was creeping into her bones, he was always there. Now he wasn't. The deeper they went into the lower decks, the worse it felt. The air was stale. Quiet. The overhead lights flickered with a weak hum, casting long, Uneasy shadows. Ripley, we're wasting time, Lambert said eventually, her voice thin. That thing's out there. Every second we're out of the safe zone. We're already not safe, Ripley snapped. Jonesy might have seen it. He might be hiding. I'm not leaving him. There was silence behind her. She knew they were scared. So was she. But Jonesy had no one else. They searched for another 30 minutes. Checked behind the supply racks. Under the galley tables. Even down by the engine coolant pipes. Ripley called for him again and again. Nothing. No soft meow. No scurrying paws. No green eyes peering out of the dark. Then they found the blood. A small smear near a corner vent. Dried, but unmistakable. And something else, ragged orange fur, caught between the vent slats. Parker was the first to speak. Jesus! Ripley stared at it. Her heart fell into her stomach. She knelt down slowly, reaching out with trembling fingers to pluck the tuft of fur free. It was soft. Still warm. Lambert turned away. It took him. No, Ripley said, her voice hollow. Ripley, Brett began, more gently, there's no sign of him. You know what this means? No, she repeated, louder. She stood, clutching the fur in her fist, backing away from the vent. He's not dead. He's not. Maybe he's just hurt. Maybe he got away. But no one answered. The silence around her wasn't just heavy, it was final. She stared down the corridor, eyes burning. The fear she had kept at bay all morning cracked at the edges, replaced by something more painful. More raw. Grief. She turned away from the others, pressing her back to the bulkhead. Her breath hitched, the first tear sliding down her cheek before she could stop it. Her hand clutched at the fur like it was a lifeline. Damn it, she whispered, blinking furiously. She wasn't going to break down. Not now. Not in front of them. But it didn't stop the tears from falling. She felt Parker's hand on her shoulder, an awkward, clumsy gesture, but she didn't push him away. We'll kill it, he muttered. Whatever it is. We'll burn it to hell for what it did. She didn't reply. She just closed her eyes and nodded. Chapter 13, Protocol. The atmosphere on the Nostromo had changed. It wasn't just the quiet, or the constant tension in every breath. It was something more insidious, something that clung to the air like oil on water. Ripley felt it. She sat at the briefing table, arms folded tightly across her chest, her jaw set. The blood smear they'd found earlier had dried into a coppery shadow. No one mentioned it anymore. No one mentioned Jonesy. The others whispered about the alien, what it was, where it came from, but Ripley. She was watching something else. Ash. He stood across the room now, fiddling with a terminal that hadn't worked properly in days. His movements were too smooth. Too relaxed. Inhumanly so. She'd caught him watching her earlier. Not just in passing. Staring. All right, Parker muttered, pacing near the doorway. We set the damn trap already. Why are we just sitting around? We need Ash to finish recalibrating the motion tracker, Lambert replied, arms tight around herself. Without it, we're just shooting in the dark. That's what we're doing anyway, Parker growled. You saw what that thing did to Brett. We all saw. Ripley's eyes flicked toward Ash again. He wasn't paying attention to their conversation. He was staring at the monitor, lips barely moving, murmuring something to himself too low to hear. She stood abruptly. Hey, Ash. The room went still. He turned slowly, face calm as ever. Yes, Ripley. She stepped forward, each movement deliberate. You've been pretty quiet since this thing showed up. He blinked. I've been working. You're the science officer. This should be your wheelhouse. But you haven't offered a damn explanation, not one theory, not one warning. He tilted his head. I'm analyzing all available data. Jumping to conclusions would be. No, she cut him off, voice rising. You knew. You knew something before Kane was infected. Before we even landed on that rock. Ash's expression didn't shift. But Lambert glanced over, clearly unsettled. I ran the comms logs, Ripley continued. You cut into Mother's terminal right after Kane was brought in. You didn't log your access. You didn't tell anyone what you were doing. I was searching for relevant medical protocols. Don't insult my intelligence, she snapped. Parker stepped between them, arms crossed. If you know something, Ash, now's the time to talk. We're dying one by one. You don't get to hide behind protocol. Ash took a slow breath, hands still by his side. I was following company directives. That answer chilled Ripley to the bone. Company directives, she echoed. The company knew. Ash didn't answer. And that silence said everything. Parker's face darkened. You son of a... Ripley grabbed his arm before he could step forward. She stared at Ash, and for a brief moment, just a second, she thought she saw something in his eyes. Not fear. Not guilt. Something colder. I'm taking this to Dallas, she said. Ash finally spoke again, voice calm. Captain Dallas is aware of the directives. Ripley froze. Lambert did too. What do you mean? She asked quietly. Ash turned back to the console. You should prepare. I believe the creature is nesting now. There will likely be more. Ripley's heart skipped. More? She backed away slowly, grabbing Lambert by the arm. Come on. Parker followed, jaw tight with barely restrained fury. None of them looked back at Ash. As the door hissed closed behind them, Ripley could still feel his eyes on her. The silence in the corridor was louder than ever. I don't trust him, she said quietly. Neither do I, Parker muttered. But I trust Dallas even less now. Lambert just nodded, pale and shaken. They had bigger problems than just the alien. They had a traitor on board. Chapter 14, Familiar Scenes. I watched them through the thin slits of the vent grating, perched silently above like a shadow that had never been born of light. The humans were arguing again. I couldn't understand every word they spoke, fast, loud, overlapping with the kind of desperation only prey knew, but I understood enough. The tones. The panic. The accusations being flung like stones in a collapsing cave. Ripley, Parker, Lambert. Ash. The one called Dallas wasn't with them now. Good. Something about that man had always tasted sour. The kind of confidence that never came from strength, but delusion. I hadn't decided what I would do with him yet. Ripley's voice cut through the others. Sharp. Accusing. Her posture reminded me of something. Something deep in the haze of memory when I was still him. Before the pain. Before the darkness. She looked like a woman I once saw in a movie. A movie I had watched. Alien. It hit me all at once. This was all so familiar. This ship. These people. Even that ridiculous cat Jonesy. Or rather, what remained of it now, stilled and digested inside me, the taste long faded but the memory still, sad. Strange. I looked down again. My elongated head tilted slightly as I shifted silently deeper into the shadows, double-jointed limbs curled like coiled wire, tail swaying slowly behind me as I listened to the chaos unfold beneath. They're fracturing. Just like in the movie. Just like I remembered. Except this time, I was inside it. How strange, I thought, to be part of a story I used to admire. When I'd sat on my couch, takeout in my lap, grinning like an idiot every time the Xenomorph appeared on screen, I had never imagined that I would become one. That I would curl inside Kane's ribcage. That I would taste the inside of a man. That I would grow into this perfect form. I flexed my claws in slow rhythm. The metal of the vent groaned beneath me, but none of them looked up. Good. They didn't know how close they were. And that made something in me, something alien, hum with delight. Still, some part of me mourned. Not for Kane anymore. That sorrow had faded, drowned beneath the dopamine rush of metamorphosis, beneath the thrill of evolution. But something in me still twisted when I heard them say the word parasite. When Ripley spat it with such venom, when Lambert recoiled from the mere idea of me. Parasite. I am not a parasite. I am Apex. I am survival. I am the result of perfect adaptation and relentless purpose. I don't steal life, I elevate it. Transform it into something stronger. More efficient. Fearsome. Yet. Why did the word sting? Why did part of me ache when Ripley cried over the cat? I tried to dismiss it. Human thoughts. Residue. A fading echo of a weaker species I no longer belonged to. I am not human. But once, I was. And that part of me still felt something when I looked at Ripley's face, wet with tears. I remembered watching her in that final act, brave, desperate, furious. I had rooted for her then, hadn't I? Now I hunted her. And it wasn't a game. It wasn't a movie. I heard the hiss of a door beneath me. Dallas and Ash entered. I stilled. The vent narrowed here, but I moved easily. My body was nothing but power and precision now. I hovered silently, looking down, inches from them, and they didn't even know it. I could end one of them now. Drop. Strike. Kill. But I didn't. I waited. Because something inside me wanted to watch this unfold. I wanted to see just how close their story would mirror the one I knew. The movie. The script. I wanted to see how far I could push them. And perhaps, how far I had left before there was nothing of Shredder at all. Below, Ash spoke to Dallas in a tone devoid of emotion. Calculating. Mechanical. Something wasn't right about him. Even I could feel it. Dallas said something about protocols. Containment. Sacrifices. My inner jaw slid out slowly with a soft click of bone. Hypocrites. They judge me for surviving. For being born. For feeding. But they will kill each other without hesitation. Because their laws are just rules they break when convenient. And mine? Mine are simple. Grow. Hunt. Perfect. I drew back into the vent's embrace, deeper this time, slipping silently through its maze. There were darker places in the ship, warm, moist corners ripe for nesting. I had a future to build. A dream to pursue. One day, I would become queen. Not like the one I saw in movies, no. Better. Stronger. Real. The most perfect organism in the universe. I crawled deeper, my black form melting into shadow. Behind me, the humans squabbled. Below me, they broke. And all around me, my hive, my kingdom waited to be born. Chapter 15, Foundation. I moved like a whisper across the ceilings, limbs stretched and tail trailing like a black vine. The hum of the ship filled the silence between each careful step, and I could feel the temperature changes along the steel walls. Warmer near the ducts. Cooler where no life stirred. I needed a nest. A place to begin. A throne room for a crown I hadn't grown yet. The Queen. She filled my thoughts like a promise. Not just a memory from my human mind, but an ache in my very bones, an instinct carved into my new DNA. I would become her. Not just a drone. Not just a warrior. The Queen. But first, I had to make room for her. I stopped above a narrow corridor, listening. No voices. No footsteps. No beeping monitors or flickering terminals. Just stillness. I slid down the wall like oil, clinging to its curves before landing silently on the grated floor. The vents here had changed. Broader. Cleaner. More symmetrical. Then I smelled it. Synthetics. Perfume. Mild sweat and sterilized cloth. This was a locker room. I looked around. Curved walls. Rows of lockers. Metal benches. Hair strands scattered on the floor like abandoned roots. Some lockers were still open, some even left ajar as if their owners had expected to return shortly. They wouldn't. This ship had no more shortly left for them. I moved to the nearest open locker and sniffed. Female. It still clung to the interior in subtle traces. Hormones. Oils. Soap. The scent was muted but real. Perfect. I slid inside. My limbs compressed easily, ribbed spine curling to fit the box-like space. My tail coiled last, careful not to scrape the metal and give away my position. I began to dig. Not with claws, this wasn't dirt or bone. But I could feel the rust at the base. The thin paneling behind the locker wall. I pressed both hands forward and tore into the metal with care, carving silently. I made a tunnel through the thin dividers that separated each unit. Once inside the second locker, I dug through again. 3. 4. 5. Each locker expanded my reach. I hollowed the space like a wasp carving a nest from pulp. Every chamber I opened became part of my growing domain. I moved back and forth, mapping the area in my mind, imagining where the walls would coat in resin once my evolution allowed it. I paused, curled deep inside one of the end lockers, and listened. Still quiet. Still safe. But something wasn't right. Too small, I thought. There were only so many female crew members. Not enough biomass to sustain a proper hive. Not enough nesting grounds if I intended to gestate more. Even the pheromones in the air here were fading. A dead end. No. This wouldn't do. I crawled backward, tail sweeping slowly as I retracted from the lockers I'd just hollowed. I could start here, but I couldn't stay. There had to be more. A deeper chamber. I shifted toward the door of the locker room, letting my body blend with the shadows that clung to the upper beams. One of the overhead lights flickered as I moved beneath it. I ignored it. The ship was aging. Decaying. Like them. I looked back once. At the dented lockers. My little kingdom of empty cages. Too few females. Too few anything, really. Their numbers were dwindling, and my presence was why. I had caused it. I was the sickness they couldn't understand, the predator they couldn't escape. I had watched this play out in film. But that wasn't film anymore. This was real. And the thought should have disturbed me. But instead, I felt right. Like I had always belonged in this form. As if my human life had only been a dream leading to this awakening. Still, as I slipped through the hallway, away from the locker room and back into the main arteries of the ship, a part of me whispered doubt. I remembered what it meant to cry. I remembered what regret felt like. But those memories were faint now. Like static on a dying radio. I would find a better place. Deeper. Stronger. Hidden from human eyes. There, I would build the future. There, I would prepare for the next stage. And if any of them found me before I was ready, they would see not a man, not a ghost, not a dream, but perfection. Chapter 16, Patterns That Shouldn't Exist. Lambert, check that sensor again. Parker's voice came sharp across the room, cutting through the low hum of the Nostromo's background systems. Lambert stood over the terminal, frowning as she swiped through another diagnostic scan. The screen flickered for a moment, then steadied, casting her face in cold green light. "It's reading some kind of energy shift," she muttered. "Localized thermal fluctuation, East Maintenance Corridor. Could be a power leak. Could be another busted duct," Parker interrupted. "Like the last three. Except ducts don't move." There was a pause. Then Brett finally spoke up from the far end of the room, slowly scratching at his beard. "You saying something's crawling around in the walls?" "Yes," Lambert snapped, more irritated than she meant to be. "No. I don't know. Look, we've all heard things. But these fluctuations? They're not random. It's like it knows when we're watching. It stops." Dallas entered then, a grim silhouette against the sliding doors. Ash followed behind, carrying a data tablet. "We've been over this," Dallas said, his tone composed but clipped. "We're not jumping to conclusions. Whatever it is, we need facts, not fear." Ripley stood in the corner, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her gaze was unfocused, fixed not on the screen, or Dallas, but on the floor on an absence. Jonesy. He hadn't come back. Not after the last sweep. Not after calling, or searching. She'd even risked going into the lower crawl spaces, flashlight in hand, calling for the orange blur that usually came padding up like a lazy king. He wasn't there. And in the silence, she knew. He wasn't anywhere. "Ripley?" Dallas asked. She blinked. Her voice, when it came, was steady but flat. "Nothing from the crew quarters. I checked the living areas. No blood. No sign of him. Just, gone." Parker frowned. "You sure he didn't just hide somewhere? Damn cat was always sneaking around." "He always came back," she murmured. "He always came back to me." The room fell silent. No one wanted to look directly at her. Ash glanced away, scrolling his tablet. Even Lambert had the decency to look down. Then Brett shifted his weight. "What about the locker room?" Dallas looked over. "Why? I was down there earlier. Something felt off. Couldn't put my finger on it. Couple of the lockers were dented. Others looked like they'd been scratched from the inside out." Lambert's head snapped up. "You're kidding." He shook his head. One had claw marks in the back wall. Thin grooves. Like something was digging from inside. "Jesus," Parker muttered. Ash finally spoke. "I believe we're beginning to see a pattern." Everyone turned. Ash's voice remained neutral. Clinical. But there was something behind his eyes. Something unreadable. "The organism is growing. That much we can assume. It has outpaced every natural life cycle we've ever catalogued. It's now mobile, and likely seeking optimal conditions for reproduction." Ripley's lip curled. "Say what you really mean, Ash." "It's building a nest." He inclined his head. "Possibly." "And Jonesy?" she pressed. He didn't answer immediately. Then, likely consumed. "Cats are small. Vulnerable. Non-essential." Ripley lunged forward so fast even Dallas had to step between them. "Don't you dare call him non-essential." She spat. Ripley Dallas tried. No. That thing killed Kane. It's killing all of us. And you're standing there like it's some damn science fair project. I am simply relaying the data, Ash said coolly. Yet? Well, maybe the data says you're full of shit. Enough, Dallas barked. The room stilled again. Ripley turned away, pacing, her fists clenched. Her throat tightened. She hadn't cried when Kane died. Not even when they'd dragged his twitching body back onto the ship. But now, over a missing cat, her chest felt like it was splitting open. Because it wasn't just about Jonesy. It was about control. And they had none. Every moment, they were losing ground. Whatever it's doing, Dallas said slowly, we need to stop it before it finishes. Before it becomes something else. You mean like a hive? Parker asked. Dallas gave a small, grim nod. Yet. Lambert's voice came next, soft but trembling. We need to burn it. Burn everything. Before this turns into a graveyard. Ash looked almost disappointed. But he said nothing. Chapter 17, The First Seed. The air smelled different now. Sharper. Sweeter. Filled with electrical hums, metallic ions, recycled air, and a constant distant drone of man-made industry. I slithered low, my elongated form hugging the shadows, limbs tucked for speed and silence. My tail, long and spined now, moved independently, a silent metronome of menace. I was stronger. Faster. More perfect than I had ever been. And I knew somewhere within the increasingly distant echoes of my former human memories that this was not the end of my growth. It was only the beginning. But growth required fuel. And a hive needed seed. As I moved through the narrow service shafts of the Nostromo, I could hear them. The humans. Their boots clanked. Their voices rose and fell, panicked but orderly. They were trying to remain calm. I remembered what that had felt like, clinging to routine when the world began slipping through your fingers. I had no such delusions now. Routine was the trap of the weak. There was no comfort in it. Only purpose. My clawed hands stopped as I reached a vent slat. Through it, I saw light. The central corridor. And one of them alone. Dallas. He moved with a slow, steady stride, flashlight in hand, casting long beams into corners. Ash, he said into the COMM, his voice crackling faintly. I'm in the lower deck. Nothing yet. Copy, came Ash's voice through his receiver. But Dallas didn't hear me. I was already moving. A blur of black and hunger. I dropped from above like the shadow of a bad dream. He turned too late. A half-second of eye contact. Recognition. Confusion. Then terror. My tail struck first, the barbed tip impaling his side, lifting him slightly off the floor as he screamed. But I didn't let him die. Not yet. No. I couldn't afford that. I grabbed his struggling body, talons raking across his uniform, pinning his arms with an unnatural strength. He thrashed. Tried to shout again. I opened my jaws and hissed, but it wasn't rage. It wasn't even hunger. It was strategy. My inner jaw did not strike. Instead, I injected a paralytic venom through a newly evolved gland, an adaptation I hadn't expected. One the organism, the perfection within me, had decided was necessary. Dallas went rigid. His screams choked off into soft gurgles. His limbs twitching as I lowered him gently to the ground. I could feel his pulse slowing. His eyes wide and filled with horror as he looked into mine. And for the smallest moment I felt something. Familiarity. A shared humanity. A man, cornered, overwhelmed by a force too vast to comprehend. I'd been him, once. But I wasn't him anymore. You are not human, I reminded myself. You are evolution. You are design. I bent closer to his face. Sleep. No words came out, of course. But I thought them. And in my mind, they rang clear as crystal. I turned then, reaching behind me where my hive had begun to grow. Crude, yes. Temporary. But acceptable for the first implantation. I had stored the embryonic sac, secreted from my internal glands an organic sac holding the next generation. A face hugger, freshly gestated, squirmed inside, blind but ready. I placed it beside his mouth. Watched it sense the warmth. The breath. And then release. It sprang with urgency and precision, wrapping itself to his face. Its tail constricted gently but firmly around his neck, pulsing in tandem with his carotid. And with that, the next step began. Dallas twitched once. Then went still. I dragged his body slowly, carefully into the locker Warren I'd begun converting. The metallic walls were warm now. Softened with resin. Seeping with my secretions. It would do. Not forever. But long enough. I placed him in the most secure hollow, coiling his arms over his chest as if laying an offering to some ancient god. A shrine to my perfection. To the legacy I would carve into the bones of this ship. Then I stepped back, watching the sac pulse as the embryo transferred. Inside, the face hugger would die. Dallas would wake again. And then he too, would die. And something better, stronger would be born. I felt conflicted. There was a time I might have grieved. There was a time when I would have recoiled at this brutality. But now? Now, that old empathy was buried beneath waves of dopamine and instinct. My transformation brought clarity, not doubt. This was not cruelty. This was necessity. Still, as I crawled back into the vents, a small voice whispered. You're slipping. You're forgetting. Becoming something else. But isn't that the point? I am not a man. I am not Kane. I am not Ripley. I am not even Shredder anymore. I am Xenomorph. And one day, I will become Queen. Chapter 18, The Captain is Missing. It started with silence. No screams. No shouts. No sudden crashes. Just an open COMM channel, and nothing coming through it. Ripley stared at the static-filled console, the blinking indicator that showed Dallas's last known location slowly fading from green to an ominous gray. He should have checked in by now, she muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. Ash stood by the doorway, arms behind his back, his face a tight mask of neutral concern. He may have lost signal. The lower deck is known to have dead zones. Dead zones don't stop him from answering when I call, she snapped, before catching herself. Sorry. I'm just worried, Lambert finished for her. She sat off to the side, hugging her knees on the storage crate, eyes darting between Ripley and the doorway. He said 5 minutes. It's been 20. Parker grunted from the far side of the room, wiping his grease-stained hands with a cloth. That's it. I'm not sitting on my ass while the captain's out there playing tag with that thing. I didn't say we weren't doing anything, Ripley replied, standing now. Her tone had shifted, sharpened, clarified. Her mind snapped into control the way it always did in pressure. Lambert, you stay up here. Ash, monitor comms. Parker and Brett, you're with me. Ash raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Lambert didn't hide her panic. What if you find it? The thing? What then? Ripley turned to her. We do what we should have done the moment it got loose. We burn it. About damn time, Parker muttered, reaching down to unhook the flamethrower from the wall. The three of them headed into the corridor. The hallways were dim. Nostromo's interior lights had a habit of dimming during atmospheric cycling, and this section of the ship hummed faintly as if it were breathing. Like a creature. Ripley held her breath as they stepped into the lift and descended. The doors opened with a sluggish hiss. "I don't like this," Brett said quietly. His boots scuffed the floor as he hesitated. "You didn't like boarding the derelict ship either," Parker said, scanning side to side, the pilot light of his torch flickering orange against the walls. "But here we are." They passed the intersection where Dallas had last checked in. His flashlight was lying on the ground, lens shattered, casing cracked like it had been thrown or dropped in panic. Ripley knelt by it. "No blood," she murmured. "No body either," Parker added. "That worse or better?" "Worse," she answered immediately. "Way worse." They moved deeper, sweeping side halls and vents, calling Dallas's name into the dark. The air was still, stale. Ripley glanced up. "Did he ever answer your last ping?" she asked over her shoulder. Ash's voice crackled in her earpiece. "No. I've been trying." No response. "Convenient," Parker muttered under his breath. Ripley ignored him. She didn't like it either. Ash's calm, always so perfect, now felt suspiciously mechanical. His neutrality made her skin crawl. But they had no time for suspicions. Not now. They reached the far end of the hall. That's when Brett saw it. Over here." Ripley and Parker turned. On the floor, tucked between two storage containers, were long smears of something slime, almost translucent but sticky, mucus-like. There was a faint trail leading toward the air ducts. "It dragged him," Ripley whispered. Parker cursed, raising the flamethrower. "No scorch marks," Ripley said quickly, noting the floor. "No signs of a struggle. She must have paralyzed him." "She?" Ripley hesitated. "It. Whatever." She closed her eyes for a moment. The pieces were coming together, but nothing she wanted to admit. "Not yet." "Maybe he got away," Brett offered weakly. "Maybe it's like that other guy. It, came out of him and he's okay." "You really believe that?" Parker asked flatly. I don't know." Ripley stood. "Let's check the female locker area. It's close to the vents that lead off this deck. If something wanted to hide, it'd look for a place where people don't go often." They moved quickly now, urgency overriding fear. The locker room was mostly dark. A few of the overhead lights flickered, casting dancing shadows against the row of metal doors. The air smelled faintly of sweat, disinfectant, and something else: whetstone, sulfur, resin. Faint but present. Ripley stopped short. Some lockers were open. But not opened. Hollowed. The floors inside had been torn up. Small tunnels dug out from their base, winding into the adjoining compartments like burrows in a termite hive. "Oh my God," Brett whispered. "Is it nesting?" Parker asked. Ripley didn't answer. Instead, she walked forward, slowly, following the strange shapes. One locker had a large cavity dug into it, resin coating the edges. Something dark stained the corner. She leaned closer. "That's blood," she said softly. "Human blood." The air was colder suddenly. Not by degrees, but by presence. A chill they all felt together. Then Brett whispered, "Ripley." She turned. He pointed. On the far side of the room, lying against the wall, was a boot. Just one. And next to it, Dallas's uniform jacket. Torn. Empty. No body. No man. Just the shreds of what was. Ripley stared. Felt her chest tighten. Dallas was gone. And whatever had taken him wasn't done yet. Chapter 19, Water and Silence. Lambert's POV. The warm water beat against the back of my neck, but it didn't do much. I leaned against the slick wall of the shower stall, eyes half closed, trying to let the heat wash anything away. The images clung stubbornly to the inside of my eyelids. Kane's twitching body. Dallas's last, silent look before he vanished into the ducts. We hadn't heard from him again. 2 gone. Just like that. I pressed my palms against the tile. The ship was quiet. Quieter than it should have been. Even with the hum of the vents and the distant click of the engines, it felt like the Nostromo was holding its breath along with us. I shut the water off and stepped out, leaving a trail of steam behind me. The locker room was dim and still. The mirror across the room was fogged over, mercifully blurring the exhaustion etched into my face. I toweled off quickly, shivering despite the warmth, and opened my locker. The pile of clean clothes sat there like an afterthought. Something about the normalcy of it made me want to scream. I dressed fast. Function over fashion. Practical pants, thermal shirt, my old flight jacket, familiar things. Then I pulled out the wrench I'd started carrying around everywhere. The weight of it gave me something to hold onto. I didn't realize how much I'd been listening for sound until I heard it. Soft. Wet. A drag, maybe. I spun around, wrench raised, heart thudding. Parker. I called. Nothing. Just the soft hiss of cooling pipes and the low pulse of the ship's walls. I took a cautious step forward. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe I was so on edge now I was hearing things. Or maybe it was another sound. Lower now. Closer. I looked up. A black shape dropped from the ceiling. There was no time to scream. No time to do anything. It landed on me with the weight of nightmare cold, solid muscle slamming me to the floor, the wrench flying from my hand. I struggled, but it was like trying to move under concrete. A long, skeletal hand closed over my mouth as the other pinned my shoulder. I saw my reflection in its glistening head, eyes wide with terror, tears brimming. I thrashed harder. Kicked. A mistake. The inner jaw shot forward, and I saw only white. Alien's POV. The female went still. Her scent had changed, the spike of adrenaline fading into the flat, metallic tang of spilled blood and finality. Her muscles twitched once. Then again. Then no more. I paused. Not for pity. Not for regret. To listen. To remember. The body beneath me was warmer than the others had been. Fresher. Her heart had fought longer, pushed harder. A shame, perhaps. But necessary. She had wandered alone. And she had made it easy. I dragged her body across the resin floor of my chosen nest, talons clicking softly with each step. The walls of the locker room had been repurposed, some lockers hollowed out and linked into tight, womb-like tunnels. It was imperfect, but it would do for now. I placed her gently beside Dallas. He had already been webbed to the wall, sealed in the sticky strands of my secretion. The face hugger I'd planted in him had done its job. The pulse inside him told me a new child was coming. Soon. I observed them both for a long moment. Their stillness felt different from before. When I had first emerged, there had been confusion, a pang of guilt I hadn't expected. Now, there was only progress. Evolution. Perfection advancing, cell by cell. The sadness still came. A whisper of something old. Faint. But now, I questioned why it even mattered. Was I not better than what I had been? A man. Frail. Soft. Dying on a couch, watching a film about monsters he thought he understood. Now I was the monster. And I understood more with every breath. There was no hunger in me, not really. No bloodlust. There was only purpose. I heard movement. A distant echo. Soft voices. 2 humans. Maybe 3. I climbed high, into the ceiling webbing I had laid. Hidden. Watching. My tail curled beneath me like a serpent. The ship was still mine. And the hive was growing. Chapter 20, Fractures in the Dark. Ripley's POV. Where the hell is Lambert? Parker's voice echoed louder than it needed to through the narrow corridor. I winced. The lights above buzzed faintly, casting a tired glow on the passageway. We were standing just outside the locker room, what was supposed to be one of the safest, most mundane places on the Nostromo. But Lambert's towel still hung on the hook by the entrance. Her boots were still by her locker. She never came out. I don't like this, Brett murmured, fiddling with the strap of his jumpsuit. Not one bit. I already searched the washroom, I said. No signs of a struggle. But she's not there. Not anywhere. Maybe she's hiding, Parker offered, though his tone made it clear he didn't believe it. Ash stood quietly to one side, eyes darting between each of us. His arms were folded neatly behind his back, calm, collected, almost too still. That always rubbed me the wrong way. She wouldn't just hide, I snapped. Not Lambert. Not after what happened to Kane. Or Dallas. There was a long silence. Those 2 names hung in the air like smoke. 2 crew members. Gone. First Kane. Then Dallas. Now Lambert. If you could even call what we found of Kane him anymore. And Dallas, he was still missing, but none of us believed he was alive. We just didn't want to be the first to say it. She must have been taken, I whispered, half to myself. Parker's jaw clenched. Then that thing's growing bolder. Smarter. And it knows the layout of the ship, Brett added grimly. We all glanced at Ash. He offered a mild, unreadable smile. We should not jump to conclusions. Fear clouds judgment. I stared at him. No, Ash. Fear keeps us alive. He didn't respond. The silence that followed wasn't just thick. It was suffocating. The 4 of us looked at each other like we'd already buried Lambert and were just too scared to admit it. Elsewhere on the ship, the hive. The air in the hollowed-out locker tunnel was warm and thick with moisture. The resin coating the walls pulsed faintly, as if alive, gleaming with a strange sheen under the dim emergency lighting that flickered above. Dallas hung from the far end, cocooned in a web of hardened secretion. Only his face remained partially visible, eyes closed, mouth slack, a line of crusted fluid down his jaw. His chest rose. Fell. Then suddenly, it shuddered. A spasm rippled through his body. A gurgling sound escaped his throat, a mixture of a death rattle and something else. His ribs swelled unnaturally. Then again. And then. Crack. It was subtle at first. A small, wet splitting. Then flesh gave way to something harder, bone, skin, and fabric tearing apart like paper. A tiny head pushed free. Slick, glistening, crowned with a pointed crest. The new life squirmed forward, dragging itself out of the cavity of what had once been Dallas. Blood gushed beneath it like a tide, pooling down the side of the wall. The newborn facehugger hissed softly, new lungs drawing their first breath of stolen air. Its limbs twitched. Its tail flexed. Alive. And hungry. It slithered down the wall and into the shadows, vanishing into the network of locker-turn tunnels, leaving Dallas's remains sagging against the resin with one eye still half open, glassy, and lifeless. Back with the crew, Ripley's POV. We need to sweep every section, I said. All of it. Vent systems, engine room, storage holds. If it's in the walls, we find it. And we need to do it now. I ain't going down there unarmed, Parker grunted. And I'm not going with Ash either. Ash raised a brow. That's unnecessary. No, what's unnecessary is that smug tone of yours while the rest of us are dropping one by one, Parker shot back. Tell me, Ash, you ever seen anything like this? Because the rest of us haven't. And every time something happens, you just say don't jump to conclusions. I think we're past that. Enough, I said sharply. Fighting each other won't help. We're all that's left. We don't even know how many are left, Brett mumbled. We can't find Lambert. Dallas is gone. Kane's dead. It might just be the four of us now. Ash's expression never changed. It's not over, I said. We don't roll over and die. We set traps. We sweep every corridor. We lock it in, and we end it. I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. And we bring Lambert back. Even if it was just her body. Parker nodded slowly, eyes hard. Then let's get to work. We turned to head toward the armory, unaware of what had just awakened in the shadows behind us. Alien, what if I was the Xenomorph? Chapter 21, The Firstborn. The metal breathes. I move like shadow between shadows, slipping through the narrowing tunnels of steel and pipe. The walls sweat. They hum with dying life, old ship veins pulsing with power, desperate to carry breath to a failing body. Beneath me, voices. Movement. Humans. 4 of them now. Ripley. Parker. Brett. Ash. I know their names. Or. I did. It is strange. I can recall them, as if from a distant film I once watched with salt-greased fingers, reclining in a couch whose shape I no longer remember. The faces blur. The names remain. They are louder now. I crawl carefully above the corridor junction, slithering through a vent panel with barely a whisper. Below, they're arguing. We don't have time to search the whole ship. Parker barks, pacing. We make time. Ripley fires back. We lose anyone else, we might not be able to fight it at all. My claws tighten slightly into the steel. She speaks of me. I should feel anger. But what I feel instead, is amusement. Even now, they don't understand. I am not a beast. I am a beginning. My eyeless gaze scans between the grill slits. Ash stands still. Silent. Always watching. Too calm. That one, is different. I shift, tail curling under me like a serpent. I could drop now. And 2 of them. Maybe 3. Would they even scream before they stopped breathing? But then. I feel it. A flicker, deep in the resin-coated hollows of the hive. A tremor not heard, but known. Something has changed. I freeze, my body coiled in a predator's stillness. The feeling rises again, warm, electric. Not pain. Not hunger. Birth. I hiss softly in the back of my throat and retreat silently from the vent. My claws make no sound as I slide deeper into the ductwork, away from the heat of human breath and toward something older, something sacred. Down through a side vent. Left. Another tunnel. A low cavity where the ship's metal bones curve toward darkness. Then I see it. A glistening shape, small but alive. Curled and twitching in the soft red-brown pool beneath what was once Dallas. It moves with instinct, limbs flexing, tail tasting the air. The firstborn. I press close, lowering my elongated skull beside it. It hisses, newborn lungs testing voice. I nudge it once with my claw, gentle. Careful. I do not remember ever seeing one born. Not with these eyes. Not in this form. But I remember what it means. I watch it scurry away into the hive tunnels. And then it happens again. A second flicker. Farther off, near Kane's remains. Another tremor of flesh splitting, fluid gushing, life slithering out of death. 2 of them. 2. A low, rising hum bubbles inside my chest. Excitement. Anticipation. Purpose. I bare my teeth, no, not teeth. Mandibles. Ivory blades of birth and hunger. We are growing. But not enough. Not yet. I rise, my frame unfolding from the shadows. My tail whips silently behind me. My hive is not yet a hive. 2 younglings are not a brood. I will need more. Many more. I must go back. They must feed us. The humans. The ones I once sat beside in a world I can barely remember. They will not understand, not until they kneel before the hive and feel its breath upon them. I twist through the ductwork again, silent as mist, slipping back toward the cruise scent. They are still arguing. Still wandering. Good. Let them talk. Let them lose their way. I will find them. I will mark them. And I will make them mine. Chapter 22, 4 Against the Dark. The tension in the room was thick enough to drown in. Ripley's back was rigid as she stood over the table, eyes flicking between Parker and Brett. They were seated, both looking grim, silent. Across the room, Ash stood near the monitor station, arms folded, his face as unreadable as ever. The mess hall felt colder than it should. It hadn't felt like a safe place in hours. Ripley's voice broke the silence. There's only 4 of us left. Her words dropped like a hammer. Parker snorted through his nose. You mean 3.5? I don't trust him. He jerked a thumb in Ash's direction without even looking. Ash didn't flinch. Your paranoia isn't productive, Mr. Parker. No, Parker snapped, but being dead sure isn't either. I don't care if you're company or synthetic or both, I don't trust the way you just keep standing there, like none of this matters. Ash raised an eyebrow. I am simply not succumbing to hysteria. Ripley stepped between them. Enough. Fighting each other won't change anything. She inhaled deeply. We stay together. That's the only chance we've got. From now on, no one goes anywhere alone. Not even the bathroom. We move as a unit. Brett, who'd been quiet, finally spoke. You think Lambert's really gone? There was a beat of silence. Ripley didn't answer right away. She didn't have to. Everyone knew. Lambert hadn't been seen in nearly 2 hours. No blood trail. No screams. Just, gone. Like the others. Parker muttered, that thing's picking us off like flies. First Kane, then Dallas. Now Lambert. Ripley's jaw clenched. She fought the instinct to yell. To scream and cry and smash every surface around her. But there was no time for that. No space left inside her for panic. Ash finally spoke again, this time quieter. I understand your fear. But it's entirely possible Lambert simply became disoriented and is hiding somewhere. We shouldn't jump to conclusions without evidence. Parker's fist slammed against the table. We always find evidence, Ash. Every time, we find what's left. And this time? Nothing. Which means that thing is learning. It's getting smarter. Ripley stared at Ash. You don't seem very alarmed. Ash blinked slowly. I process concern differently. That did it. Parker stood so fast his chair toppled over. I'm telling you, he knows more than he's saying. I've been nothing but transparent, Ash said, still calm, still infuriatingly composed. Ripley held up a hand. Both of you. Stop. She turned to the console and tapped a few commands into the terminal. The ship's map flickered onto the screen. We scan in pairs, sweep the west sector again. If Lambert's hiding, we'll find her. If not. She trailed off, but they all knew how that sentence ended. Brett leaned in toward the map. We check cryo, the medbay, lower storage, then what? Ripley sighed. Then we secure the engine room. It's got sealed doors. If we can hold there, we figure out how to flush this thing out an airlock. Or burn it. Or something. Ash's voice, low and flat, interrupted. I must advise against fire in the engine room. It could compromise the entire ship. Ripley shot him a glance. You got a better idea? No, Ash said simply. Just a caution. Parker sneered. He's always got cautions. No solutions. We're all trapped in the same nightmare, Brett murmured. Ripley's hand balled into a fist. Then let's wake up. They moved out together this time, a tight cluster of footsteps echoing through the metal corridors. No one wanted to admit how claustrophobic it felt. The pipes above seemed to breathe. The hum of the ship was no longer comfort, it was a constant whisper of something just out of sight. They passed near the mess hall again. The corner where Jonesy, Ripley's cat, had once slept was empty. Still no sign of him. Ripley didn't speak. She couldn't. As they moved deeper into the west sector, flashlights slicing through the dimness, Brett muttered, "Feels like it's watching us." Ripley's grip on the flamethrower tightened. Ash brought up the rear. And somewhere, unseen above them in the ducts, something crawled closer. Chapter 23, Taken. The corridor stretched on in front of them, dimly lit by the emergency bulbs that pulsed every few feet like a dying heartbeat. The crew kept a tight formation, their boots tapping lightly against the steel floor, their breaths sharp and shallow in the recycled air. Parker walked ahead, his modified flamethrower slung low in his grip. Ripley was just behind him, scanning every shadow and corner, jaw tight, eyes darting. Brett followed, turning every few steps to check their rear. Ash, as always, brought up the back, silent and steady. Too steady. They'd made it halfway through the corridor toward the medbay when it happened. A sound of wet, skittering, dragging thud echoed above them. "Stop," Ripley whispered, raising a hand. Everyone froze. Parker spun in place, flame ready to fire. Another noise now. Heavier. Like limbs slapping steel. Above us, Brett hissed. They all looked up at once. And then it dropped. Like a nightmare peeling off the ceiling, the Xenomorph plummeted from the shadows in one fluid motion. A blur of glistening black limbs, jagged teeth, and tail. Straight onto Ash. He didn't even cry out. The crew screamed. "Ash!" Ripley shouted, instinctively lunging forward but too late. The creature wrapped its long limbs around him like a spider folding in its prey, then leapt. It vanished with him into the shadows of the overhead vents before a single shot could be fired. Silence. The only sound was the rattling of the vent cover clanging shut above them. Then Ripley gasped. "Ash!" Parker stumbled backward, bumping into the wall. What the hell just happened? It just took him. Brett's eyes were huge, his voice shaking. He didn't even fight back. It grabbed him like he was nothing. Nothing. Ripley's voice trembled, but she forced control. Did you see its size? That was bigger than before. Taller. More complete. Why, Ash? Brett whispered. Parker snarled. Because he was lagging behind. That thing waited for it. Ripley's knuckles went white on the flamethrower grip. It's hunting us. Not just attacking. It's thinking. Planning. Brett wiped sweat from his brow. We have to go. It could come back any second. Parker stood there, breathing hard. He's dead. Like the rest of them. Ripley wasn't so sure. Ash hadn't made a sound. Not even a grunt. No struggle, no resistance. It was like he let it take him. But she didn't say that out loud. Instead, she backed toward the nearest sealed doorway, pushing a trembling Brett with her. We fall back to the medbay. Now. Parker gritted his teeth, raised his flamethrower again. Next time I see that thing, I'm cooking it from the inside out. They retreated together, every step echoing like a countdown, the vents above groaning faintly. Somewhere, something shifted again. And Ripley, for the first time, began to wonder. Did Ash really get taken? Or had he gone willingly? Chapter 24, Instinct and Habit. Alien Perspective. Ash was heavier than expected. Not in mass, but in meaning. I dragged him with a kind of disinterested obligation, the way someone might haul refuse after a long day. He didn't fight. Didn't scream. Didn't twist or plead or resist. His body remained eerily limp, head hanging loosely, mouth slightly open as if mid-thought. Even now, slumped on the floor of the hive, I examined him without empathy. I had never liked Ash. There was something artificial about him. Even when I was still human, I didn't trust his face. Too blank. Too smug. Too quiet. I hissed softly and dropped him with a wet thud against the side wall of the locker hive, the sticky mucus already webbing across his chest to hold him in place. My tail twitched. I crouched down and stared at his slack face, still expressionless in death. The first egg had already opened. A face hugger slithered up his abdomen like a spider returning home. It clung, its legs tightening around his skull, and began the process. Behind him, my hive was no longer barren. I turned. One of them, my kin, stood fully upright now, the sleek curvature of its skull gleaming in the dim lighting. Tall. Perfect. Lethal. It gave a small, acknowledging hiss when it saw me. I hissed back, throat vibrating. There was no need for words. It knew. More. We need more. I moved again, dropping to all fours and retreating into the ducts. The second egg was still sealed, but the stirring inside was becoming more agitated. Soon. Soon I would have two. And it still wasn't enough. I sniffed the stale air, twitching my head toward the vent that led back toward the central corridor. I felt the vibrations before I heard them. Voices. Footsteps. Parker. Yes. Him. He had the flame. The anger. The defiance. Let's see how long that lasts. Switch to human perspective. I'm just saying, Ripley muttered, folding her arms. It's been 2 days. I'm covered in blood, grease, and ash, no pun intended. Brett shook his head, his voice hushed but firm. No one goes anywhere alone. I wouldn't be alone. I'd be in the locker room. 2 doors away. And I'd leave them open. Parker leaned against the bulkhead, flamethrower balanced against his thigh. You remember what happened last time someone decided to clean up? Lambert. Ripley's expression faltered. She did remember. Too vividly. The steam from the water. The blood down the drain. The way they never found her body. But she also remembered how the grime clung to her skin, how her hair had started to mat, how she could feel the oil creeping into her pores like a second skin. I'm not asking for an hour, she said. Just 5 minutes. Cold water. Eyes open the whole time. Brett rubbed his face. And if it shows up? You'll be standing right outside the door. Both of you. Parker exchanged a glance with Brett, then sighed. Fine. But 5 minutes. And we don't leave. If we hear anything, we come in flamethrowers blazing. Ripley nodded. The shower room had never felt like a sanctuary. It was sterile, mechanical, another compartment in a floating tomb. But as she turned the knobs and water sputtered to life, she closed her eyes just briefly and let it wash over her like relief. Not peace. Never peace. But something approaching humanity. Outside the door, Parker grumbled under his breath. I hate this. I hate all of this. Brett didn't respond. He just stared at the empty hallway ahead of them, one finger on the flamethrower trigger. Behind them, the corridor vents whispered softly, almost like breathing. Chapter 25, The Split. The vents are warm tonight. Not from heat. Not in the human sense. But alive. Vibrant. Every vibration in the hull speaks to me like a drumbeat, footsteps, murmurs, distant clicks of machinery. Life. The kind I will reshape. I move slowly, tail curling behind me, claws quiet against the metal grates. Below me, her. Steam pours out around Ripley's shoulders, plastering her dark hair against pale skin. She's tense. Every few seconds, her head tilts listening. Good instincts. But they won't save her. I watch through the thin slats above. The water rolls down her back, and I feel a flicker of something. Not desire. Not in this body. Not anymore. But memory? Reflex? Shame? No. Waste of energy. She's not the one. I move away. Down the vent. Quiet. Fast. Purposeful. A low clang echoes as I shift past a loose plate, and I hear the reaction before I see them. Parker. Brett. Outside the shower room. Right where I knew they'd be. Parker is leaning on the wall, fidgeting with the strap of his flamethrower. Brett stands a few feet away, arms folded, watching the hallway like prey pretending to be a predator. They don't know I'm already above them. I pause. 2 of them. Not ideal. I could kill both, yes. But there's no need to risk it. Divide. Distract. Devour. I press my weight to the vent panel just enough for it to groan. Instantly, Parker jerks his head up. What the hell was that? Brett takes a step forward. What? You didn't hear that? He turns back and starts scanning above him. My claws clink lightly just enough. A shadow. A suggestion. Nothing more. Parker's face tightens. I see it in his eyes: curiosity. Anger. He starts walking. Flamethrower raised. Slow steps, controlled breathing. A hunter. Brett grabs his arm. Parker. No. Don't do this. I'm not going far, he snaps, shaking him off. You remember what Ripley said. We stay together. Parker doesn't respond. His boots echo softly as he walks away, heading toward the junction near the maintenance ducts. Brett watches him go, lips drawn tight in frustration. Good. I slip deeper into the vents, paralleling Parker's route, staying just out of sight. My body flattens to the ceiling, tail coiling silently behind me. My thoughts pulse with intent. One at a time. The game begins again. Chapter 26, The Chase and the Flame. Ripley's POV. Parker, don't go. Brett's voice rang out loud, urgent, echoing through the corridors just beyond the washroom. My head snapped toward the sound even as hot water ran down my back. I froze only for a moment, but that moment was long enough for the fear to crawl up my spine like ice. No. I slammed the water off and shoved open the stall door, steam rolling out around me. The sudden cold slapped my bare skin. A towel, anything. I grabbed the nearest one and wrapped it hastily around my chest. "What's going on?" I called out. Brett turned to me as I ran barefoot across the floor, water dripping from my legs. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Ripley, put some damn clothes on." "No time," I snapped, shoving past him. We both heard it. Parker's voice. A grunt. Then, "Ah!" The scream punched through the hallway like a warning siren. I didn't need to hear anything else. I sprinted toward the sound, the towel slipping but still clutched to my chest, my heart pounding loud enough I could barely hear Brett's footsteps behind me. I rounded a corner. But the hallway was empty. Smoke lingered in the air. A scorched vent cover had fallen, its edges blackened. I smelled burning metal, and something else. Parker. Alien's POV. His scream was satisfying, short, sharp, almost musical in how it trembled with terror. But I didn't get what I wanted. Not this time. I'd made the sound deliberately. I'd led him. Toyed with him. He followed just like the others before him. Arrogant. Curious. Foolish. He came around the corner with the flamethrower raised, mouth tense, footsteps loud. I waited above him so close I could taste his sweat through the air. I dropped. He screamed. Reflexive. Instinct. He pulled the trigger. Whoosh. I didn't expect the heat. Not like that. The fire licked up my shoulder, scorched the edge of my arm. Not like the minor flare from a welding torch or the weak licks of furnace heat I'd sensed before. This hurt. I reeled back, hissing loudly, tail thrashing against the corridor walls. Too close. Too fast. I scurried backward up the wall, my claws struggling briefly to regain grip. Pain flared through the nerves along my arm, foreign, unfamiliar. It didn't paralyze me, but it slowed me. It angered me. Parker stumbled as I moved. His hand trembled. I saw the hesitation. Another blast of flame chased my retreat as I darted into the next shaft, slipping into the ceiling above. His second shot missed, scorching empty air. But I didn't go far. No. I crouched in the dark above, crouching, pressing my wounded limb to my chest. My inner jaw clicked against my fangs. So, the fire does damage. A simple observation, but one I hadn't known before. A flaw in my assumptions. A correction to my instincts. It wouldn't happen again. I could hear Ripley's voice in the distance now. She was coming. And so was the next stage of the hunt. Chapter 26, The Hunt Begins. Ripley's POV. Parker, don't go. Brett's voice rang out, sharp and full of panic. I immediately froze, my heart sinking as I listened to Parker's footsteps fading down the hallway. Something's wrong. I spun around, still soaking wet from my shower, my pulse racing. I grabbed the nearest towel from the bathroom counter and quickly wrapped it around myself, my hands trembling slightly. Brett! I shouted, but there was no answer. I heard the sound of Brett's hurried footsteps retreating ahead of me, disappearing into the hallway. I didn't have time to think. I needed to follow him, needed to get to Parker before it was too late. I rushed out of the bathroom, my bare feet slapping against the cold metal floor. Brett, wait! I yelled, but he was already too far ahead. Brett's POV. Parker! I bellowed, my voice hoarse with panic. The sound of Parker's footsteps had already gone too far, and I had no time to waste. I gripped my flamethrower tightly, heart hammering in my chest. Ripley was behind me now, but I didn't wait for her. I had to make sure Parker didn't end up like Lambert. I knew where he'd gone. I had to get to him, and fast. I sprinted ahead, my breath quickening with every step. I knew Ripley was coming behind me, but I had no time to explain. I had to protect Parker, protect all of us. Ripley's POV. I pushed myself harder, the towel slipping slightly as I raced to catch up with Brett. My mind was spinning with worry, my heart pounding in my chest. Parker's scream echoed in my ears, still fresh and painful. I turned the corner just in time to see Brett reach the end of the corridor. He was crouched low, his flamethrower aimed toward something. But it wasn't Parker. I looked down the hallway, my breath catching in my throat. There was nothing. Where is he? I turned to Brett. What's going on? I demanded. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he nodded toward the dark shadows at the end of the hall, where Parker's scream had come from. The silence that followed was thick, oppressive. I'll cover you, Brett muttered. He raised his flamethrower, his grip tight, eyes scanning the hallway as if the alien might leap out of the walls at any moment. I stepped forward cautiously, scanning the darkness. My skin prickled with dread, but I couldn't stop now. Aliens POV. I could feel it, they were coming. Ripley and Brett. They were closer now. Too close. They were frantic, searching for something to stop me. But they didn't understand. I'd already taken Parker. He wasn't coming back. Now it was time to hunt again. I could hear their footsteps, sharp against the silence of the hallway. But I stayed still, watching from the shadows as they approached. The way Ripley moved, the tension in her shoulders, it told me she was on edge. Good. She wouldn't see me coming. I watched them from above, hidden in the ceiling vents. They were too distracted, too focused on the wrong things. They'd been looking in the wrong places. I moved, silently, further back into the darkness. I could hear Brett's flamethrower powering up, the sound of it a loud hum against the stillness. He wouldn't stop me. I waited for just the right moment. The scent of fear, of frustration, it made the hunt even more thrilling. And then I moved. I dropped down from my hiding place, landing on the metal floor in a fluid motion. Ripley and Brett barely had time to react as I attacked. I could see their shock, their hesitation. Brett swung the flamethrower, the flames igniting in an instant. But I was faster. The heat scorched me, hurt, yes. But I had no time for pain. I pulled back, leaping backwards into the shadows, but I couldn't help but feel surprised. The fire had done more damage than I had expected. But that was fine. I would learn. I always did. The flames didn't stop me for long. But it was clear now this wouldn't be so easy. Chapter 27, The Silent Tension. Brett's POV. My heart still hadn't stopped racing. The flames, the heat, the searing pain, nothing had prepared me for how much damage that thing could take. It had only been a moment, but it felt like hours had passed. The alien retreated, but it was only a matter of time before it came back. It always came back. I cursed under my breath. The flamethrower should have been enough, but it wasn't. Nothing felt like enough anymore. Damn it, I muttered, glancing down the hallway as I paced back and forth. Where the hell is Parker? No response came, and I didn't expect one. I wasn't looking for reassurance, I was looking for an answer, for something. Anything that could help. Damn it, I cursed again, louder this time, frustrated. I slammed my fist against the wall, not caring about the dent I left behind. Ripley had fallen behind, her footsteps too soft to hear over my own anger. As I continued to walk ahead, my mind was stuck on what had just happened. Parker was gone, just like Lambert. The tension was unbearable. They were being picked off one by one. How long until it was my turn? That thought alone made me move faster, but then something caught my eye. Ripley was behind me, still clutching her towel. Her gaze was focused, distant, almost like she was lost in her thoughts. Without a second thought, I pushed on, not paying attention to what was behind me. I wasn't sure if I could stand hearing her say anything. The reality was too much to deal with, and it felt like we were all waiting for our turn. She'd lost 2 people. I'd lost Parker. We were all just waiting to die. Ripley's POV. As I followed Brett, something caught my attention. My towel, it was slipping. I quickly adjusted it before he could notice. The knot at my back was loose, and with each step, I could feel it threatening to fall completely. I glanced at Brett, still walking ahead, unaware of the near catastrophe. I felt a wave of embarrassment, but quickly pushed it aside. It didn't matter. What mattered was getting through this nightmare, and surviving. I quickly tightened the knot at my back, making sure the towel stayed in place, and kept my pace steady. I wasn't sure what to say, and I wasn't sure what Brett needed to hear right now. He was consumed with his thoughts, his mind racing, as was mine. We both felt the loss of Parker. We both felt the dread and the weight of what we were dealing with. But there was something different about Brett. His anger was palpable, and it didn't leave much room for conversation. I cleared my throat, speaking quietly, so that only Brett could hear. "What do we do now?" He didn't look at me when he answered. "I don't know. We just keep moving." I frowned, but there wasn't time to argue. I looked down the corridor again, hearing only the soft hum of the ship. It felt empty, oppressive. "Should we check the others?" I asked, hoping he had some idea. Brett finally turned to face me. "They're probably gone, Ripley. It's just us now." His voice was harsh, but I could tell it was more directed at himself than at me. I stayed silent, absorbing his words. The realization had set in that it really was just the 2 of us. The others were gone, one by one, and there was no guarantee that either of us would survive what was hunting us. But we couldn't stop now. Not after all we'd been through. As I caught up with him, I noticed his posture stiffened, like he was preparing for something. "What happens if it's just the 2 of us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We keep going," Brett muttered. "That's all we can do." Brett's POV. I kept walking ahead, my mind trying to figure out the next move. We couldn't keep running forever, but that's all we had left. I glanced back briefly to check on Ripley. She was still behind me, the towel clinging to her body, barely hanging on. And then I realized, without even thinking, I cursed again under my breath. I hadn't even checked to see if she was okay, if she needed help. But there was something else. She was fixing her towel. I hadn't seen it before, but now, I noticed. It was almost like everything had happened so fast. Too fast. I felt this tight knot in my chest, a mix of guilt and frustration. Ripley wasn't talking much, but I couldn't tell if she was being strong or just shutting down. I wasn't sure which was worse. "Ripley," I said suddenly, as we walked. She looked up. "Yeah. What do we do?" I asked again. Ripley bit her lip, thinking for a moment before responding. "We stick together, like we said. We don't stop. We find a way to survive." And that was it. There was no comforting anything. There was no plan. Just survival. Chapter 28, The Shift in Flesh. It was subtle at first. The burning sensation within my body wasn't pain, it was growth. Change. A molt, perhaps. Like a serpent shedding its skin. No, like a monarch climbing from its cocoon, wings slick and glistening. I stood, or rather crouched, deep within the nesting space I'd carved out between the back of the lockers and the ship's storage compartments. The metallic walls hummed faintly. The air was heavy with pheromones mine. My claws gripped the metal below me as I arched my back, exhaling a silent hiss. Something was happening. Something new. I could feel it in my limbs, stronger, thicker. My back no longer hunched in the same way. The ridges along my crown had changed shape, higher, more regal, curving like a crest. My limbs, still sleek and deadly, had grown in bulk, but with an elegance like a dancer forged from bone and shadow. I looked down at the puddle of secreted resin pooling near my claws, and something deep inside stirred. I wasn't just growing, I was becoming something else. Something higher. I turned slowly, the locker walls surrounding me narrowing as I moved toward the cracked side mirror I had scavenged from a burnt-out supply compartment days ago. It was tilted awkwardly, clouded by dust, but I could still make out my shape. Gone was the clean biomechanical elegance of the drone. No, this was something more grotesque, more beautiful. The back of my skull bore the beginning curve of what might one day become a crest, the kind the Queen wore in the movies of my past life. My shoulders had shifted, more flared. My tail had thickened near the base, and my abdomen. I lowered my head slowly, touching the segment now budding near my lower body. It was swollen. No, I thought. Not like a drone. Not like them. Something had changed. And my instincts now clearer than ever told me the truth I already suspected. I was becoming a queen. No hive. No mother. No egg sac hanging above me. But evolution didn't need permission. I was alone. I had to become something more. A strange pressure built in my lower body, followed by a twitch. I crouched, bracing myself, and then... wetness. A single, gelatinous egg slipped from me, resting in the resinous floor beneath me. It pulsed faintly, like a heart forming in darkness. I stared at it, captivated. It was small. Weak. Primitive, perhaps. But it was life. My life. It wasn't perfect, nowhere near the scale the true queen could produce. But it was proof of concept. Proof of progress. And progress was everything. Nearby, Parker's body lay slumped, dragged here not long after I escaped his flamethrower's reach. He had screamed so loudly. Fought so violently. The burns on my forearm were still healing. He had earned a place here. He had earned the honor of hosting. His chest had long since risen and fallen for the last time. Now it was still silent. I reached forward, brushing the sticky resin across his limbs to secure him into place. He wouldn't move when the facehugger hatched. I had made sure of that. I stepped back into the shadows of my crude nest, watching the egg twitch faintly with embryonic anticipation. I could feel it. Inside me. This was only the beginning. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. My vision narrowed. A hunger stirred not for flesh, but for growth. I needed more bodies. More hosts. More room. The hive was still too small. I needed it to spread. The female, the one called Ripley, was strong. Smart. She would be a challenge. And challenges made for stronger offspring. For now, I returned to the vent network, weaving through the ship's veins like blood through capillaries. I passed again by the locker rooms, then through the maintenance ducts near the crew quarters. The faint scent of stress was everywhere: sweat, adrenaline, fear. I crawled soundlessly, the hum of the ship muffled around me. More hosts. More life. More future. This was no longer about survival. This was about ascension. And I was no longer just a xenomorph. I was a queen in the making. Chapter 29, Hunted. Ripley stood alone in the locker room. The silence pressed in around her like a vice. The air was cold, too cold, and the metallic scent of blood and something else, that acrid, oily stench of the creature, still lingered in her nostrils. She'd barely escaped with her life. Again. She let out a shaky breath and peeled the bath towel from her skin. It fell to the bench with a wet slap. For a few seconds, she just stood there, staring at her own reflection in the narrow mirror above the lockers. Who was she kidding? This wasn't survival. This was a countdown. She reached for her clothes, damp with sweat but still intact from earlier, and began dressing quickly, pulling the jumpsuit up her legs, shivering slightly as the cold fabric clung to her skin. The zipper rasped harshly as she pulled it up over her chest and collarbone. She dragged her fingers through her wet hair, wincing when they caught on a tangle. 2 full-grown xenomorphs. The thought spun in her mind like a cyclone, relentless, heavy. She'd seen something. Something that confirmed what she'd feared. Movement subtle, synchronized, and in opposite directions. There were 2. She adjusted the collar of her jumpsuit and stepped out into the hallway. Brett was waiting. He leaned against the wall near the corridor junction, chewing the inside of his cheek and muttering curses under his breath. His face was drawn, eyes sunken with fatigue and something darker, grief, maybe rage. He didn't look at her when she stepped into view. "Parker's gone," he muttered. "I heard him scream. I heard it." Ripley didn't answer right away. She moved toward him slowly, her boots thudding softly against the floor. "He's dead," Brett continued, louder now, angrier. "Like the rest of them. And Ash, hell, even that piece of synthetic trash couldn't make it." Ripley exhaled through her nose. "Ash is dead. He got pulled through the vents. You saw it." "I saw it. There's no one left." Brett finally looked at her. Just the 2 of them. The realization settled between them like a stone. "Jesus," he whispered. "How'd we let it get this far?" Ripley shook her head. "It picked us off one by one. That's how it works." There was a beat of silence. Then she added, voice steady, "We don't let it finish the job." Brett scoffed bitterly. "And how the hell are we supposed to stop it, Ripley? There's 2 of them now." 2. "I barely sleep knowing there's 1. They have to be nesting somewhere. That's what these things do. They don't just kill. They take. Breed." Her eyes hardened. "We find the nest. We burn it. And then we get off this ship." Brett gave a dry laugh. "And go where? You wanna call for rescue? Bring someone else into this nightmare?" Ripley's jaw clenched. "I don't know. Maybe I set the ship to self-destruct and take those bastards with it." He didn't say anything. They started walking together, slowly down the corridor. It was the same walk they'd done dozens of times, except now every light flicker felt like a warning. Every faint hiss of steam sounded like breath. "I thought it was over when Dallas died," Brett muttered. "Then I thought it was over when Lambert disappeared. But this..." His voice trailed off. Ripley didn't press him. They turned another corner. The shadows stretched long ahead of them, and Ripley couldn't stop scanning them for movement. Brett spoke again, lower now. "You saw it, right? Back there when Parker screamed. You saw something?" Ripley nodded. 2 shapes. One fled. One waited." He shook his head in disbelief. "So that's it. Kane's thing, and now whatever came out of Dallas. That was fast." She glanced over. "Not fast enough." Brett raised a brow. She continued, if there are 2 fully grown, then there might be more on the way. Parker, he might have been taken. Or worse. Used. Brett looked like he was going to throw up. We're walking corpses, Ripley. No, she said firmly. Not yet. Not until I say it's over. They reached the observation room empty. A few lights flickered overhead, and the scent of burnt wiring lingered. Ash had been torn apart not far from here, and his remains were long since dragged off. His data's gone, Brett muttered. All the movement logs. Whatever the bastard was doing, it died with him. Ripley stared through the observation glass into the halls beyond. Then she turned back to Brett. Then we do it the old-fashioned way. We track it ourselves. Find the bodies. Find the nest. Brett grunted. And then? She looked him in the eye. Then we kill them. He nodded after a pause. All right. Ripley's shoulders sagged slightly from the tension. She turned back toward the corridor. We check the vents first, she said. We know it uses them. Start at the engineering junction and work our way back toward the infirmary. Brett followed her lead, hand drifting toward his makeshift flamethrower. It sputtered lightly in his grip, the pilot light flickering. Ripley. She stopped. He hesitated. You don't think there could be a queen, do you? She didn't answer. Because she didn't want to admit that she had started to wonder the same thing. Chapter 30, The Nest. The corridor was damp and quiet. Ripley's boots echoed softly against the grated floor as she led the way, flamethrower in hand. Beside her, Brett moved with deliberate slowness, eyes flicking up toward the overhead vents every few steps. The air carried a faint stench, something bitter, organic, and wet. It reminded Ripley of a slaughterhouse. We're getting close, she murmured. Brett grunted. You sure? No, she admitted, scanning the shadows. But I can feel it. Smell it. The corridor widened into a large maintenance chamber. Lights flickered, casting jagged shadows on the wall. At the far end, the corridor split in 2 directions, each route vanishing into dimness. That's when they saw it. A long, sleek shape moved silently through the cross passage. Its silhouette gleamed under the flickering lights, head smooth and oblong, tail dragging behind like a black whip. A xenomorph fully grown. Back, Ripley whispered, raising her flamethrower. But the creature didn't see them. It simply turned and stalked away into the opposite hall. Wait, Brett said. This way, let's circle around. They pivoted quickly, retreating from the side passage and looping through the adjacent corridor. As they moved deeper into the ship, the walls began to change. The smooth metallic architecture gave way to something different, slick, almost pulsing with life. Organic structures lined the walls, twisted black ridges edged in patterns that seemed unnatural. Jesus Christ, Brett breathed. Is this the nest? Ripley's eyes widened. The corridor floor sloped downward into a dim, cavernous chamber, and they saw them. Dozens of eggs. Some open, others pulsing faintly. In the center, half submerged in a tangle of resinous growths, lay Parker's body. Ripley took a step back, bile rising in her throat. We have to go. Now. But before they could turn, a hissing sound split the silence. From the vent above, a second xenomorph dropped into view, its claws skittering as it landed on all fours. It was close, too close. Run! Ripley shouted. They bolted, charging back the way they came. The xenomorph let out a shriek behind them and gave chase, claws tearing into the ground. Brett fired behind them, a burst of flame lighting the corridor for an instant, but the creature recoiled and ducked into the vents, circling around again. As they reached the junction, Ripley froze. A second xenomorph now blocked the hallway ahead, taller, broader than the first. It tilted its head, eyeless face fixed on them. And then something else landed. Thud. A heavier shape dropped from the rafters between the two xenomorphs, its form more massive, its crest broader, more angular. Its body shimmered with a faint green hue under the lights. Its posture was different, commanding. It hissed low, and both other xenomorphs stepped back. Ripley's heart pounded. It's different, bigger, smarter. Before she could react, the massive xenomorph surged forward, claws outstretched. Brett pushed Ripley hard to the side. Go. She hit the ground, rolled, and scrambled to her feet. Brett. Run. He turned to fire, but the first xenomorph had already dropped down behind him. It slammed into him with brutal force, knocking the weapon from his hands. Ripley sprinted down the corridor, weaving through the halls with desperate speed. The ship's lights flickered madly around her as she raced for the central bulkhead. Ahead, a closing security shutter. No, no, no! She dove just in time, sliding across the floor and ducking under the metal door a split second before it sealed shut with a deafening clang. She lay on the cold ground, panting, heart thundering in her chest. Behind the door, silence. Then, faintly, a sound like metal scraping. A low hiss. And nothing. Brett was gone. And now, they had a leader. Chapter 31, Control. POV, the alien. The shutter slammed down with a final clang, the echo rattling down the corridor like a death knell. I stood motionless before the sealed entrance, head tilted, watching the last traces of her scent vanish beneath the mechanical wall. She had escaped. Again. I could still hear her heart, feel her frantic breath on the other side, but she was beyond my reach, for now. It didn't matter. She would not get far. This ship was mine. Slowly, I turned my head to the left. One of the younger xenomorphs, the first one born after me, stood in the dim corridor, awaiting silent instruction. Its head dipped respectfully when I stepped forward. I gave it a subtle click. It slithered past me, stepping carefully around the scattered resin that lined the floor. Its claws sank into the remains that had once been Brett, broken, torn. His weapon had spilled fluid everywhere, but he was still usable. The drone dragged the body back toward the nest, his legs trailing behind like discarded cloth. My attention, however, was elsewhere. The humans had been whittled down, one by one. I had watched them scatter, panic, divide. Now only Ripley remained. I stalked through the corridor again, claws lightly scraping the walls, my body coiled but unhurried. The ship was dark now. Lights flickered erratically, systems losing cohesion. There was no voice on the intercom anymore, no footsteps, no conversation. Only the hum of the ship and the breathing of the hive. I was stronger now. Bigger. I could feel it inside me, something changing. Every movement felt smoother, heavier with authority. The others looked to me without question. My frame was growing broader, my carapace adorned now with a strange, regal curvature.